All right, let me now share my screen. All right. So, hello all. Welcome to the seventh meeting of the Senate and the final one for this semester. I hope you all had a wonderful fall break. And before I call to open, I just want to emphasize something that I've been emphasizing for the past couple of weeks. That during these meetings, the content of our argument should never be personal. When we're discussing legislation, we're discussing words on a piece of paper. So let's be sure to be mindful of that and keep our discussion to the content of the legislation rather than the content of an individual's character. I am sure that everyone in this body is capable of that, and I really look forward to some of the debates that we have in store for us today. With that said, I'm going to call to open at 6:35 p.m. Attendance will be taken based off of the vote totals that I received throughout the night. When I take a vote, it records individual responses, so I'll see who votes in each given vote. So that's how attendance will be taken. Reports are done. You can see them at your leisure. Feel free to reach out to any of the people who have written their report if you're interested. All of the people listed here have given a report, and the link to that spreadsheet can be found in the folder I sent you all, along with the report button there. If you click on it, it links you right to the PowerPoint. We will now move into voting items. The first voting item is the approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion on the approval of the minutes? Let me pull up the participants so I can see hands and such. All right. Seeing no people with their hands raised to discuss this, I'm going to move to pass the minutes by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to passing the minutes from last meeting by unanimous consent? Please unmute yourself or raise your hand now if that is the case. Seeing no objections, the minutes from last meeting have been approved. We will now move into the confirmation of the Rainbow Center ex-officio senator. For this position, I've had from the Rainbow Center nominated Cal Benedict. Please correct me if I said your name wrong.
No,
Do
you
you
said it right.
accept the nomination?
I do.
Wonderful. Would you like to say anything before we move into questions?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay, wonderful. Are there any questions for the nominee? Seeing no questions, I'm going to move to confirm Cal Benedicts as the Rainbow Center ex officio senator by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to doing this? Seeing no objections, congratulations, Cal. Feel free to vote in any future items on the agenda tonight. You are, as of this point, a senator. We will now move into the confirmation of 4 presidential appointments to the University Senate. If you all look at the agenda, you will notice that I have grouped a couple of appointments and confirmations together. This is solely for the sake of time. We could go through and approve each nominee individually for each position, but I feel as if that would take a large amount of time, and we have a relatively full agenda. So as long as there is no dissent to any of the given nominees in any of the future motions, we're going to vote on them as a single motion. Should anyone want to divide it out, they may motion to do so, and if a majority of the body agrees, we will divide out and vote on whatever nominee is divided out for that given thing. So feel free to make that motion should you want to not approve of a given nominee or vote on a nominee individually for whatever reason. You may make those arguments, and then we will consider doing that. But for now, I'm moving to confirm 4 appointments to the University Senate. I will allow the president to introduce his nominees, and then I will ask if they accept their nomination.
Thank you, Luis. Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank our nominees for stepping up to the role to represent students in the University Senate. And with that said, I'm appointing Ben Kelty to the Curricula and Courses Committee, as well as the Enrollment Committee, Sam Dorman to the Faculty Standards Committee, and Damani Douglas to the Diversity Committee. I want to thank them for, again, stepping up to this role. I have complete faith in them, and I look forward to seeing them grow in the University Senate.
Do the nominees accept, of course, Michael, do the nominees accept their nomination?
I do.
Yes, both are fine.
I do.
Is Sam here? If Sam's not here, you may accept on his behalf, Mike.
Sam is not here, but Sam has accepted the nomination, so I will do so now on his behalf.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the nominees or for the president who has nominated them? Feel free to raise your hand, and if you have your hand raised for an extended period of time, unmute yourself and let me know, because there may be an issue with the system. Seeing no questions, are there any comments regarding the nominees? I forgot to do that before, but I don't think that there were any. No questions or comments, we will move to confirm these nominees by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to confirming these 4 presidential appointments to University Senate by unanimous consent? Once more, unmute yourself or raise your hand if you object to this going forward. With no objections, the 4 appointments are now university senators, I believe is the proper term. So congratulations to them. We will now move into a confirmation. 6 student services advocacy coordinators. I will yield over to Becky to introduce her nominees.
Great, thank you so much. And hi everyone, so happy to see you all here. I'll turn my video on. So it's my pleasure and my honor to nominate these candidates. We had about 54 applicants apply. It was very competitive. I'm so impressed with everyone's ideas and passions, and cannot wait to see what they will all do in this role and how they will grow and be amazing. So I nominate them excitedly and with lots of passion. And if Kavya as well was super involved in the hiring process and the interview process, was such a large help. And if she has any words to say, I love to turn it to her. But otherwise, thank you so much, and I'm so excited to see what y'all can do.
Do the nominees on the screen accept the nominations?
Yes.
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 And then Becky, you accept on the one who isn't here's behalf.
Yes, Michaela's not here, but she accepts as well.
Wonderful. Are there any questions for the nominees or Becky? Seeing no questions, are there any points of discussion on the nominees? Kavya. Or Kavya. I don't know how to say your name. I do apologize.
Oh, you're good. It's Kavya, but thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to say, Becky, it was so, thank you so much for being so helpful throughout this whole hiring process. It definitely was very stressful, and it was just so good to be able to talk through it all with you. And for our new student services advocacy coordinators, I'm so excited to work with all of you. You all have so many exciting passions and interests, and I just can't wait to see where this all goes and to better student services, USG, and UConn as a whole. So congratulations.
Thank you. Fabio.
Thanks, Luis. I just wanted to make a quick point. Becky and I have spoken about these positions at length, so I totally support them being filled at this time. But I just wanted to make the point because I think the Senate should just know as a whole, with every one of these positions that we confirm with every new hire, it's anywhere from probably a $2,000 to $3,000 expense that the student government will incur over the course of the year. And every time you guys confirm someone for a hire, I just would like you all to keep that in mind. Again, spoken with Becky about these positions, no financial concern from my part, but they are just as much of a financial cost as they are employees. So just important to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio. To clarify a little bit more, the confirmations we've done just before this are not compensated, so that doesn't apply there. But it applies to this and the next item on the agenda, just for context. Not to confuse anyone. Are there any other points of discussion before we move into a vote or unanimous consent? Ben.
I just have a question for Becky and Kavya. Why did we this year decide to split or to have two coordinators for sexual health and education?
Becky,
And then,
feel free to answer. Oh,
okay,
sorry, my
yeah,
bad.
sorry. Okay, yeah, that is a really great question. So it was previously Tampon Time Task Force, and then we kind of rebranded, reimagined into Sexual Health and Education Advocacy Coordinator. It's really, really broad. It's a lot of work. I think of all the work that all the great work Jackie Saris did for just the Tampon Time Initiative. And then if we're looking to expand upon that and look into expanding sexual health, education, and resources and access, then I see that as two really large large jobs, especially trying to be as inclusive and intentional as possible to in these conversations because so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering, but yeah, so that's kind of where I'm coming from with that, and I hope that makes sense, and I can definitely go into it a bit more, but thank you.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you, Ben. Are there any other points of discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to move to confirm these 6 people in their positions by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to doing so? Seeing no objection, congratulations to these 6 people. Well, that was really cool, Irene. How did you do that? Sorry, I saw hands.
I stole the
waving
idea
aside.
from Mike. I saw him do it. I thought it was good.
Oh, okay. I just saw yours. Kudos to both of you. We will now move into the confirmations of the Student Development Deputy Director. I will yield to Christine to introduce her nominee.
Happy we had that emoji addition to the WebEx before I introduce our lovely new Student Development Deputy Director, Rita Townlow. Her commitment to diversity and the diverse voices of our student body will just make that our commitment that much more impactful and empowering. And I'm really so excited to have her on our team. And yeah, just make student development the best it can be. And I'm so excited for what we're going to be able to accomplish next semester.
Does the nominee accept the nomination?
I accept.
Thank you, Rita. Are there any questions or comments at this time? Damani.
A comment, not a question. It comes in 2 parts. The first is happy birthday to Rita. It is, for those of you who do not know, her birthday. And the second thing is I have had the pleasure of working with Rita since before she was sworn into USG. In our freshman year, when she won her election to the MCD constituency, which was one of the first times that we actually had that constituency filled, and Rita was one of the first people to do that. She had this idea for an initiative that student development had already been running. That year, we, mainly Sean Roach, executed a cultural center open house, and we had events with each of the cultural centers throughout the week, and kind of culminating in the open house. And Rita sent me an email with this idea of, why don't we make this bigger and better? Let's put on a showcase. Let's highlight each of them. Let's do multiple things with each center. Let's really show off folks' culture and their and give a platform to express that and share that and celebrate that. And then since then, she's continued her work through the Cultural Appreciation Series, which she played no small part in bringing into USG and conceiving the initial idea for that, along with Alexandra and Sierra, who were helpful in executing that. But I truly want to congratulate Rita, and I think that she's an extremely deserving and qualified applicant for this position.
Neha.
I don't really know Rita too much, but I've heard a lot about her through my brother, Kunal Kataria, Chloe, Ish, just everyone at UConn. And I'm so excited to see another woman of color in a position in student government. And I could not be more proud to see her face, see her smile. Happy birthday. Welcome back. So happy to see you. So happy to be in this organization with someone like you. And I just can't wait to see all the amazing things you continue to do here.
Thank you, Neha. Are there any other points of discussion or questions before we move into a vote or a move by unanimous consent?
Thank you both.
That will move into a motion to move this by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to confirming Rita as Deputy Director of Student Development? Seeing no objections, congratulations, Rita. And happy birthday. We will now move into the confirmation of the student. Oh, wait, already did that. We will now move into the funding policy update, which is a change to reimbursement and lodging quote procedures and outstanding debt sanctions. I will yield to the authors of this legislation to present it now.
Thanks, Luis. These are pretty straightforward changes here. Just pulling them out myself. So the big changes, you no longer will need to submit 3 quotes for lodging. USG is just going to fund by the GSA rate, which is it's not going to affect how much funding groups have been getting. Instead, it's just going to alleviate how much it's going to reduce how much paperwork they need to do in advance. And the second change is, let's see, reimbursement procedure change. So moving forward, instead of reimbursing to different students, which what that requires is a student would need to be inputted into QuickBooks as a new vendor every time we needed to do that. So it created a lot of work for our full-time staff. Instead of doing that, students should automatically expect their reimbursement to go back to their club account. So it makes things a lot easier for our staff. And then the last thing that's being changed is we're adding a sanction essentially for groups with outstanding debts. So what this will allow us to do is withhold funding for groups that have outstanding debt and haven't paid it after we've contacted them to pay it, which is something we've kind of already done, but since it wasn't solidified in our funding policies, we wanted to put it in there. So those are the 3 changes.
Thank you, Fabio, and thank you to all the other authors who put this together. I wish I could pull it up, but it appears as if my computer isn't working with me, so I encourage you all to pull it up on your own computer. Are there any questions for the authors before we move into discussion? So here I'm soliciting just questions. So Ben, I saw your hand first.
Yeah, my question is specifically with regard to that third change. I'm looking at 6.2E and 6.4A. And so I'm hoping that you can make clear exactly what it means to defer consideration versus withholding money. Because defer to me means, wait on it, whereas so I'm just trying to get a sense of what exactly this does in terms of how funding changes if you have a debt.
It's a good question. So what I meant by defer consideration was process up to a vote. So I mean consideration by the funding staff. So should the group pay their debt, the request would be processed enough that it would go to a vote, but the request will not be voted on if the group has an outstanding debt.
Thank you.
Kevin, feel free to ask your question now.
Hi, Fabio. My question is related to the changing of lodging rates from quote-based to like GSA rates. Is this going to be based on a per diem similar to GSA? So I guess my question really is it possible for us to be giving student groups a GSA rate and then them to book the cheapest motel they can find and pocket the per diem similar to a traditional per diem?
So that's a good question, Kevin. So thanks for asking. The first part, we already fund by the GSA rates. So even if you submit 3 quotes, we're still going to fund up to the GSA rate. However, we will not allow you to pocket. So at the end of it, you'll have to submit an invoice and we will only pay up to that invoice. So if that invoice is less than the GSA rate per diem, we will pay the entire invoice. If the invoice is above the GSA rate per diem, we will pay the GSA rate, and the group will be liable for the difference.
Thank you.
Thank you to Fabio. Are there any further questions before we move into discussion? Seeing no further questions, are there any points of discussion on this legislation? Seeing no discussion, I'm going to move to pass this by unanimous consent, seeing as there was no discussion and the questions would seem to be very thoroughly answered by our very competent comptroller. Are there are there any objections to passing this legislation by unanimous consent? If so, please raise your hand or unmute yourself and say so now. Seeing no objections, it is so moved. Congratulations to the authors and to Tier 2 groups everywhere. We will now return to the agenda for a statement of position regarding anti-discrimination and accessibility in registered student organizations at the University of Connecticut. I will yield to the author to present this legislation now.
So a little bit of background on this legislation is it kind of came to attention when I was working on an advocacy project. We were trying to get solid accessibility training for student organization leaders, but through our talks to make that project happen, we found out that there are not, in fact, civil rights protections for student organizations. So technically, under the current policy, it is allowed for student organizations to exclude otherwise qualified individuals based on their disability status. And it is also not required for them to accommodate students with disabilities, which means that students with disabilities can be excluded solely based because of their disability. What this act does, or the statement of position does, is it calls for a meeting with some of the student activities leaders to talk about creating a policy to prevent discrimination and to make it required that students with disabilities be included if they need accommodations.
Thank you, Abby, for the introduction and for the work you've done on this legislation. Are there any questions for Abby about this? Seeing no questions, are there any points of discussion on this legislation? Damani.
Just real brief. There's a lot of great work in this legislation. I personally am, I've said this before, I'm a big fan of footnotes. And I do love to see the actual laws, and would seem to obviously apply in these circumstances, kind of not addressed. So thank you for noticing that, and for bringing it to our attention and then to student activities attention as well.
Thank you, Damani. Are there any other points of discussion? Kavya, my bad.
Hi, I just wanted to say, Abby, this is such a great piece of legislation, and students with disabilities, there has to be more awareness. Students with disabilities are such a marginalized group, and yeah, this legislation is amazing, and I would love to help in any way I can. So thank you.
Any further points of discussion? Seeing none, I will once more move to forward this by unanimous consent, seeing as there were no dissenting opinions readily available. If there is any objection to forwarding this by unanimous consent, please raise your hand or indicate now by saying so. With no objections, this is so moved. Congratulations. We will now move into a bill concerning the undergraduate student government's bias response protocol. I will now yield to the authors of this legislation to introduce it.
Great, thanks, Luis. This was inspired originally by President Hernandez's Executive Order number 7, and we thought it was important to really flesh out how the USG responds to bias and responds to bias incidents specifically regarding its members. And so it creates a way for people to report bias-related incidents involving USG members, and it charges the Chief Diversity Officer, Mr. Damani Douglas, with investigating and preparing a report as well as suggesting sanctions against that member if that member is found to have perpetrated a bias-related incident. And so, yeah, it involves the judiciary in that process, and it also involves the Diversity and Outreach Commission in that investigation process. So, yeah, anything else, Damani?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I think we turn it over to questions at this point.
Wonderful. Neha, is that a question you have?
Yeah, sorry I didn't ask this earlier because I've been kind of seeing this legislation for a while, but it happened like right after it passed an internal. I was like, oh goodness. It's just like a logistics one. I remember at the end it said like, if the person wanted to remain anonymous, like the investigation will like something like, so the commission I think is in total of like 12 people. If the person wants to remain anonymous, who would be in charge of like choosing if their suspension gets furthered? Would it just be you as the chief diversity officer? Would it be you and the justice and the president? Like, who would do that?
Just to clarify your question, you were referring to, well, let me provide some definitions generally, and then clarify your question. So when I use the term respondent, that's what I'm going to use to refer to a person who was a report was filed against, right? So if someone alleges that I engaged in misconduct, then I would be the respondent in any case. If I'm the person who's to file a case, then I am the referring party. I just wanted to clarify, which person were you talking about just then? Are you referring to the privacy of the respondent?
I'm referring to the privacy of the perpetrator. I don't know all the complicated words you just said. The person who commits the act.
Yeah. So to whatever extent possible, the intention would not be to create a fanfare. If the sanction is impeachment, right? Then we have to know who we're impeaching. If the sanction is something like you need to go take this training before you can resume participation in USG or in any particular setting, there may be a group of people who need to be aware of that. If, for example, the person is a senator, right? They would be prohibited from participation in Senate. So that's something that the speaker and potentially Senate leadership would need to be aware of. If the person, were to be a director of one of the committees, then their deputies would probably have to be aware that they would not be able to participate in USG, and the president, as their supervisor, would also probably have to be aware of that. Yeah, does that get to your question?
Not really. So if you read the whole legislation, it says that if someone were to go through, like, conduct a bias-related incident, the people to review it would be you, right? You would suspend for 2 weeks, I think it is. And if they want to continue the suspension, it has to go to the commission. If that person wants to remain anonymous and the commission is 12 people, clearly they all can't know who would be the deciding person to continue the suspension.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay, so the question is centered around 3B on the legislation, which is the part Luis has on screen right here, referring to the interim suspension, and that would be the chief diversity officer who would be responsible for that, and the reason being, if there is not cause to extend, which I don't think that there often would be. I think that the investigation would probably be wrapped up in that period, assuming that a interim suspension was warranted. Then that would just move on to the judiciary at that point. If a suspension needed to be carried out for a longer period of time, then that would have to be justified to the commission, and I think that would probably be, again, case by case, but probably be possible in more egregious cases without mentioning a name. But with some more specific cases, I could see potentially needing to use the name. But to answer your question directly, that would in fact be the chief diversity officer who makes that call.
All right.
Okay, that explains a lot. Thank you so much for answering that.
Thank you. We'll move to Lakita. I see you have your hand up for a question.
Hey, so I just wanted a clarification. So is it the way it's currently, is it going to be 2 weeks, or is that just a suggestion someone made and it is going to be 3 weeks the way it's written out?
2 weeks is an amendment that we're planning on bringing.
Okay, sounds good.
Right now, as the legislation currently stands in front of us, 3, but we're planning on making the amendment to 2.
Janana?
Hi. So yeah, I love the idea of making protocols more apparent. I just had a clerical question. In reporting, if any member of the student body becomes aware of a bias incident involving a member of the USG, are USG representatives on University Senate committees under the Chief Diversity Officer now, or would it still be the president? I was just wondering for the future.
All of those folks would still report to the president. The president is still going to nominate those people. When necessary, the president could recall or no confidence those folks as well. This where this would apply to University Senate folks would be if there is a bias incident in one of those contexts, then someone could open a investigation that could potentially result in a sanction of them being removed from the committee.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the bias incidents as well would apply to them. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for the questions. Is that another question? Oh, I see the hand went down. Are there any further questions before we move into discussion? Seeing no further questions, we will now move into discussion. And we will start with the amendment that was mentioned. So if one of the authors would like to make that, feel free to go ahead.
I move to amend the legislation and adopt the suggestions listed in the document.
Is there a second to that motion?
Can I take it as friendly?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. So I see that we have a second and it's taken as friendly. Perfect. So the second is to Lakita for the minutes later. Seeing as it was friendly, there's no need for a vote. We will now move back into discussing the legislation. So, for clarity, for all those, we moved a little bit fast there. Originally, the amount of time in an interim suspension was 3 weeks, but what we've just done is we've moved that from 3 weeks to 2 weeks. This was done after extensive discussion between internal affairs and just now. So that essentially all that changed was the amount of time the chief diversity officer can unilaterally suspend someone from participating in USG4. So it was reduced by 1 week. With that clarified, are there any other points of discussion on this legislation? Mike, feel free to go ahead.
Thank you, Luis. I just wanted to voice my support for this legislation in its modified version with the addition of the amendment, changing the initial suspension period to 2 weeks. This is much needed legislation as it provides a framework for the chief diversity officer to do a lot of important work that we need. So yeah, I just wanted to voice my support, and thank you to Ben and Damani for their extensive work on this legislation.
Thank you, Mike, for those comments. Are there any further points of discussion? Seeing none, we're going to move this by unanimous consent as well. If anyone at all objects, I am open to doing a vote. I have it all set up on the other screen, but I would have to stop sharing my screen. So if anyone wants to do a real vote, object, and we will do a real vote. With that said, are there any objections to passing this by unanimous consent? With no objections, this is so moved. Congratulations to the authors. We will now move into a bill concerning a vacancy in the power. Maybe I miswrote that. That didn't mean. And or the position of chief diversity officer. Feel free to do so. Comment is all that was needed. Thank you. I'll now, after that confusion, yield to the authors to present this legislation.
Yeah, this this legislation mainly arises out of an oversight from the First Step Act. At no point did I clarify what should happen in the event of a vacancy in the office, whether that comes from resignation, impeachment, or incapacitation, or whatever may happen. So this is just to clarify that. Says when the chief diversity officer when there's a vacancy there, the vice president takes over until the Senate elects a new chief diversity officer, which is in parallel with the way the process currently works for the comptroller. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. And this is I should note, it's a constitutional amendment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Are there any questions for either of the authors? Senator Gladstone is also a author here, just for clarity.
No, Senator Kelty.
Senator Kelty.
Kelty. Oh, my bad. I apologize. Are there any questions for the authors? Mitchell.
Yeah, this is kind of just a point of inquiry, but in most of our legislation, does it say like stuff in the event of death of an officer? I thought that was odd when I was reading this, but I don't know.
It is. It's just kind of to cover all the bases. We're not. We hope that the CDO doesn't die, but if they do, we'd like to have something in place.
I'm going to echo that sentiment entirely. We hope that the CDO doesn't die.
I saw another question, but the hand went down. So if that was your hand, please say so. If not, I'll once more solicit questions. Seeing no further questions, we'll now move into discussion. Are there any points of discussion on this legislation? I'd like to quickly add that this and the previous piece of legislation are great pieces of work from Senator Kelty and Damani. They put a lot of work into both of them, and I appreciate the effort they put in. For a little bit of clarity, this will be voted on during the spring election by the student body, and we can consider it in effect, but not necessarily binding until then, because technically the student body has to vote on our constitutional changes, but not our bylaw changes. So that's just a little bit of context for those who aren't as familiar with the process. So if we pass this, we'll consider it reality, but it won't be fully in effect until the students vote on it. Uh, Before I move into deciding whether this passes, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I will once more move to forward this by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to forwarding this legislation? Seeing none, it is forwarded. Congratulations. We move into the new code of conduct, and I will yield to the author of this legislation to present it.
Hi, sorry I don't have my camera on. I am making a little bit of dinner right now, so I'm going to try to keep this brief but explain everything. So my position here is parliamentarian, which kind of helps run Senate along with Luis, but a little bit different. And when say a senator doesn't or anybody in USG doesn't follow any of the guide, how do I explain this? Oh my goodness. So this is like what every senator must follow when they become in USG. Any like person in USG, like all members, and specifically there's like all elected, appointed, whatever. If you're in USG, this is the code of conduct you follow. So say you are not following this, this is what is used to remove you or suspend you. So it's kind of in connection to what Damani said. So there is some things we added to go along with Damani's legislation, which he can talk about a little bit further. So under point C, all the highlighted stuff is all this I would like to add. So say there's abuse or misuse of power. I wanted to add specifically if there's any bias related to race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, all those things listed on the Student Bill of Rights. So I literally quoted it from that. Just so in the future, if there's any very bad biases, like very blatantly obvious ones, it would be easier to remove someone. And then for D is kind of in relation to what Damani said. So if someone if you have to strive to uphold these Bill of Rights, and if you don't, or witness a bias-related incident, then you have to report it to the CDO. So he has his own little Google form that he'll be sending out. I don't know if he already has, but that's just kind of going along with that, like report any incidents to him or the future CDO. And then I don't know if you guys remember when you guys were sworn in, you went through a sexual harassment training and it was mandated, and I'm happy that all of you guys came. In the future, we also want to mandate a diversity and inclusion training. So both of these trainings will be mandated for all elected, appointed, and confirmed members. So that doesn't mean committee members who aren't in USG, but all USG members. So those are the changes that fuck, man.
Are you all right, Neha? We'll return to Neha. I hope she's okay. We'll return to her when she gets back. I'll add a quick little point here. This diversity and inclusion training is already in effect through the executive order that was mentioned before. This would essentially replace that part of it. So between this and the previous two acts, we've put that executive order into our governing documents. Neha, are you there? I'm going to text
her laptop just died.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. I can field questions because I've helped Neha with this a little bit. So are there any questions about this legislation? Or comments? Either will be accepted at this time. Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak in any capacity about this. Senator Kelty.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, voice my support for this and say that all three of this, as well as the last two pieces of legislation that we have, we considered, are all really, really closely intertwined. And the goal, of course, is to make USG more responsive to bias-related incidents, to make it a more egalitarian place where everyone can have their perspective heard. And so I'm strongly in support of this. And thank you guys so much for passing the last two pieces of legislation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Any other points of discussion or questions? Mitchell.
Yeah, just kind of the same thing. I don't want to take up time, but I just want to second everything that Ben just said. So there we go.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any more before we move into deciding? All right, seeing no further discussion, I'm going to move to once more forward the new code of conduct by unanimous consent. I feel a little bit bad doing this without Neha here because I want to let her finish what she's saying. Perhaps during discussion we can return to it and she can add whatever she'd like to add. So with that, are there any objections to forwarding this by unanimous consent? Seeing none, it is so moved. Congratulations to the author, who I hope gets back soon. We will now move on to the Duct Tape Act, and I will yield to the authors of this legislation to present it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Josh and I, Josh, Caleb, our roommate Michael and I all works on this one together. But Josh and I presented it in internal, so we'll give Caleb an opportunity to present it now.
Thank you, Damani. I was very ready to present this. As everyone can see, if you've read the legislation, the vast majority of it means very little. It was intended to kind of, lighten the mood, comic relief, and all that. In the past, we've had events at Senate such as the Connor Glassell game night, and those events. Of course, we can't do them anymore because we're not in person, but those events really helped to bring the Senate together. And the organization as a whole. There were a lot of executives and justices that went. So we think that, sort of coming back to do those funner things, those more fun things, would really be helpful for the organization. That being said, we figured that the best way to do anything would be to write it down in legislation in the most pedantic way possible. So, I'll let all of you peruse this at your leisure. But, if you're busy doing anything else at all and you don't get time to peruse it, I think that's okay. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them. I yield to the speaker.
Are there any questions for the authors of this legislation?
Yeah, actually, I do have a question. I know it's kind of insane. I have a question about this bill, but is this like a real thing or is this just like a joke?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Go for it, Damani.
No, unless Caleb wants it.
I'll yield my time.
Yeah, so absolutely. This is both a real thing and a joke. The serious bits here are we do intend on creating a regular space open to all USG members where we're going to figure out some games that we can all play virtually all over WebEx. We can all play against each other or play on the same team, cooperative. Maybe it's something like Jeopardy. Maybe it's something like Among Us. And we just wanted to write it all down and tell you about it.
For context, the three highlighted on the screen are the most serious three clauses of the legislation that are actually being enacted by passing it. The rest is significantly less serious. The floor is still open to questions or comments at this time. So are there any questions or comments? Senator Kelty.
So, for those of you who were in internal yesterday, you know that I couldn't decide whether I loved this or I hated this. And I've decided that it's a mixture of both. It's about 65% love and 35% hate. The parliamentary procedure nerd in me hates this with a burning passion. However, at the same time, I do think that this legislation brings up some very valid points. And connection right now is severely limited. This is a body that, in normal times, I'm told, actually does bring people together and create some lasting friendships and some lasting collaborations. And that this year has been pretty lacking, and it will probably continue to be less than it was. And so this Committee on Social Interaction, henceforth referred to as a CSI, I think is a great stepping stone, and I am strongly in support.
Mitchell.
Yeah, kind of just seconding that. As a new senator, I think it's a good idea regardless. And then, yeah, like obviously, like Ben said, in a different semester, I'm sure we would all know one another a lot better. And I'm sure I'd know a lot of you. And it sucks that I don't. So I hope this is a cool thing, and we actually try to figure out some stuff. That'd be great.
Any further points of discussion? Thank you both for your comments. They are appreciated. Seeing no further points of discussion, I'm going to move to pass this by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to doing so?
Can I say one more thing in discussion?
Of course.
I want to thank Caleb for playing along. Josh and I didn't tell him that he was going to have to present this. He did. So I want to appreciate that.
With that in mind, I'd also like to acknowledge that before we move to the unanimous consent portion. So thank you all for this serious yet fun piece of legislation. We're moving this by unanimous consent. Any objections? Unmute yourself and say so, or raise your hand at this point in time, and we will move into a legitimate vote. Seeing none, it is so moved. The Duct Tape Act is enacted. Congratulations to the authors and the new committee chairs. We'll now move into the Talkspace plan. A little bit of levity between very serious pieces of legislation here. With this, I'll yield to Fabio and Becky if they'd like to present these options for us.
Talkspace is the mental health app that we've been talking about for quite some time. We've already allocated the funds for it, so now pretty much what we're just presenting here is two options that we'd love your thoughts and opinions on for how we're going to utilize the funds. So pretty much what we're looking to, there's all this stuff you can read through. It's the screen. But really what's most important and what we're really deciding between is 1 or 2 30-minute live video sessions per month. And I say video session, that's a live telehealth therapy session, either 30 minutes once a month or 30 minutes twice a month. And you can see the cost difference here. And, me and Fabio and I have been working hard on this, and we've been thinking a lot about it, but we'd really love to open it up and hear what everyone has to say and to make a decision about which plan to go for. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to look at this and for your opinions on it. Let me know if there's questions.
So just to clarify before we move into questions, this isn't a piece of legislation that we are enacting. This is Becky and Fabio coming to us and asking for a straw poll about which of these two plans we want. So whatever we do isn't necessarily binding here, but they will take it under consideration when proceeding with the negotiations and talk going forward, to my understanding. So at the end of this, I will put a poll, but I'll open it up to discussion for anyone on the Senate who would like to make an argument one way or another. or ask questions now. So with that, I'm yielding to. Oh, go ahead, Fabio. Before we move to questions.
Thank you. Just real quick, guys. So this 2 live video sessions. So just a full disclaimer here. The annual premium plan plus here that they included was kind of like custom created for us, because I had asked about what it's like, if we could get 2 live video sessions a month. Their usage through their statistics, they see under 1 video session per month usage, meaning a lot of people sign up for the service and they'll either use, if they sign up for like a 2 live video session a month plan, some people may very well use both video sessions, but because of the vast majority that don't use 2 or maybe 1 for that matter, it brings the average down below 1. The reason why we're bringing this forward to you guys is because we wanted to collect data. The way that I personally envision Talkspace working is taking, those patients from campus mental health services that go on a regular basis, but not a super regular basis for in-person help, and transition them to Talkspace, thus allowing more space for patients that need more regular help, perhaps multi-times a week or something. So it's just a hypothesis, right? So I personally support the 2 live video sessions a month, even though it's going to reduce the numbers in our pilot. I think it best helps us collect data. So if we see with our pilot population that the number of video sessions, the average number of video sessions a month is greater than 1, we'd be more likely to pursue the annual premium plus plan for all undergrads versus the other one. So that's really the point here of why we're presenting these 2. But we'd like to leave the decision up to you guys. So happy to answer questions.
Just for one more point of clarity that was made during governing board when we approved this purchase, if only 1 student were to show up, we would only pay $400 here. So it's not like we're paying the full amount of money to have it available for all students if it's not used by everyone in the potential plan. So so the cost is dependent on the number of students who sign up. That was something that was very important for me when considering. So I just wanted to make that available for all of you. With that, we will now move into questions for the authors. Presenters, I suppose, at this point. Lakita.
Hey, so that was my first question, so I'm glad it got answered in terms of the number of students. But in the event that, let's say, a student signs up, but they only do it for 1 month and then they stop it, would it be possible for us to replace them with another student and continue for like 2 more months, or would they be considered 2 separate students? 1 signed up. I can sort of rephrase that if that didn't make sense.
No, Lakita, that made sense. So I think the only way we'd be able to accomplish what you suggested is if the account becomes inactivated. So the way that the salesperson, Dave, explained this to us was how many active accounts are present at the beginning of each month. So, if that student uses it for 1 month and doesn't inactivate their account for the duration of the pilot, their account would remain active, and we would be charged 3 months for that student, even though they only use the service for the first month. It's my understanding. Becky, feel free to interject here if that's incorrect. But I appreciate that question, because at least Becky and I, when we are working out this pilot in the future, can work with the students to make sure that if they don't like the service after a month or so, that they inactivate their account to open up for other students.
Thank you for that line of questioning. Ben Kelty.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for bringing this. I do have a couple of questions, 3 right now. The first question is, are the live video sessions fungible between accounts? In other words, like Fabio, let's say you and I both signed up for a Premium Plus subscription, and I didn't use any of my video sessions. Could you then use 4? Or is it specifically between the accounts?
I'm under the impression that it's between the accounts. So I'm pretty confident in that as well.
All right. The second question is, you're describing this as an initial pilot. And so what exactly is the long-term plan? Because 80 grand is, a significant amount, I think, of the budget that we allocated toward this, which was, if I remember correctly, $250,000. so what's the long-term plan here in terms of if we're only going to be able to serve 200 to 250 students, that's 1 to 1.25% of our undergraduate population. What's the long-term plan here in terms of spending money?
So in our fiscal year 21 budget, we allocated $80,000 for the pilot, and then the governing board just dispersed it a couple of weeks ago. So we didn't allocate $250,000 yet, but that is the projected long-term cost for the annual premium plan for all undergrad students at UConn. So because this is a pilot and there's a set number of students here, you know, what it means to Talkspace is we're going to get 200 students to sign up. That's the idea here. So because of that, they charge us per person, and that's a significantly higher cost than the regular plan, which is pay for access for everybody, 20,000 undergrad students at $1 a student a month, and have like a 1% usage rate. So if that makes sense. So that's why the cost is so much different here. But long term, we're looking to collect data from this pilot. That is really the point here. We're looking to collect data. Talkspace runs a bunch of statistics internally, usage data related. And then Becky and I and anyone else is welcome to assist us if they would like. Feel free to reach out. We're going to be putting together our own survey with student health and wellness and with the assistance of Talkspace, basically to ask the students that do sign up for the pilot, like what they think of the program. And from that data collection, we, it'll come to the Senate as a whole, hopefully at the end of the spring, maybe over the summer, even into the fall. And you all will decide whether you want to go for the annual subscription and what annual subscription to go for, the annual premium or the annual premium plus. So this is a 3-month pilot for each of the two programs.
Okay. I want to bring it to everyone's attention before we continue this line of questioning that should we get into too many specifics about potential future contract negotiation, we should in fact move into an executive session, as the company that we are working with will, as any individual in the United States, have the right to look at our minutes. So they will see our plans for future contract negotiations. So if that is the intention of the body, I recommend someone makes that motion rather soon.
I will not be pursuing that specifically. I just have one more question.
Go for it.
But if anyone else wants to, please make that motion. My third question is, you talked about freeing up space for people who need Shaw Mental Health regularly. And to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, Shaw Mental Health right now specifically does not treat people who need regular services. They refer people out if you need weekly or biweekly. So are we talking about forming some sort of new standard of care, new type of care in Shaw Mental Health?
I wouldn't say we have gone that far into it yet. But with that said, the purpose here overall is to give an additional aid to all undergraduate students. And in theory, if this aid works for students that are currently seeing Shaw, and this aid is sufficient to give them the help that they need, perhaps they wouldn't continue working with Shaw because they are getting help through Talkspace. So you are correct that Shaw doesn't allow regular appointments. I'm under the impression they don't allow biweekly appointments. That may have changed since the last I've heard of that was like last year. They allow weekly but not biweekly. And they don't allow biweekly because they don't have the bandwidth for it. So by freeing up some patients that may be seeing every other week, once a month, whatever, to transition them to Talkspace, my thinking is that that would open up space for students that need more regular care, like twice a week. Again, we really need to collect data here. If we get 200 students sign up in a couple of days, it shows that there's a lot of patients that are interested in Talkspace and would support moving to the annual plan. The flip side is no one may sign up or few people may sign up, and it shows that there's not sufficient interest to continue. Hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. And I don't have any other questions at this time. I yield back.
Is it okay if I add into that?
Sure, go ahead, Becky.
Thanks. I also think because Ben, I think, was trying to get to like part of the point and like how this is supplementing or enhancing what we've already got. I think a big part of this is, there's no cost to sign up. There's no, it's all covered by us. No one will know that you're on it. You can do it in the comfort of your home on your phone. I think, during quarantine, a lot of us are stuck at home. We're struggling with finances. And this also, even if someone normally would be using typical Shaw, but for some reason they can't find the privacy or they can't find the funds, this could help that group of folks as well. So I think it's good to, like you were starting to get at, narrow down like who our audience is, and I think it's important to include that group as well. But yeah, so that was a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. We'll move to Mitchell and then Lakita.
All right, just a super quick question. I think this is awesome. I was just curious how we're going to be asking folks to sign up. Will it be like an email that we're envisioning out to the entire student body or something like that?
Thanks for the question, Mitch. So we haven't, I guess, thought that far ahead because it's going to require a lot of processing for the pilot to begin with. But the way sign up will work is with a keyword. So USG will advertise this keyword, and if you sign up with like your uconn.edu email address and input the keyword, that will give you access to Talkspace for the 3-month pilot.
Thank you, Lakita.
Hey, so I just have a question in regards to the budgeting. I was kind of curious as to whether we've reached out to or plan to reach out to Shaw Mental Health in regards to budgeting going forward, just because I think it's a great initiative, but I also think that, like, if it is something we want to continue longer term, like, shouldn't money be coming from both places?
Becky and I plan to, well, first of all, we have been in touch with Shaw Mental Health, but Becky and I will be reaching out to, over winter break, to the other administrators at UConn to hopefully secure funding for this if we decide some fraction of funding for this should we decide to move to the annual plan.
Thank you. Ben.
One question that I forgot about. What's our current kind of projected timeline on this? I see the 3 to 4 weeks. Is that 3 to 4 weeks from tonight? Is that 3 to 4 weeks from when we make a decision in 2-3 weeks? What's kind of our plan for timeline?
So that's probably 3 to 4 weeks from when the PO is finalized. So once we figure out what plan, the Senate is comfortable with going with tonight, Becky and I will then, discuss that over and refer that to our staff to begin processing the PO. There is a little, I'm looking for the word. There's an unknown variable here with whether we're going to have to go to what's called a bid process or not. We're hopeful that we don't have to go to a bid process because this is a pilot program, but bid processes can get drawn out very long. So with no bid process, we're hoping to have this ready to go by February 1st. With a bid process, we may be able to get it for February 1st, but it becomes more unlikely.
Thank you to both of you for that question and answer. Lakita.
Sorry, one last question. In regards to the plans themselves, because I noticed that obviously one plan covers more students, but only one session versus the other. If we calculate it out to the $80,000 budget, how many people does the annual premium cover versus the annual premium plus?
So my understanding is the numbers that you see 250 students, that's what the 80,000 would cover. For 80,000 under the annual premium plan would cover 250 students for 3 months. 80,000 would cover 200 students under the annual premium plus plan for 3 months. So it's 250 versus 200 students. The retail cost at the bottom is what the 3-month plan would cost without the discount that they're offering us.
Thank you for that clarification. Seeing no more questions, I'm going to move into discussion at this time on these two potential plans. So are there any points of discussion at this time? Senator Kelty.
Yeah, I'd like to offer an opinion. I think that we should go for the pilot with the Premium Plus plan. And And I think that's because, as Fabio said, the gathering of data is important when we're considering what kind of plan we should offer students in the long term. I think that if we were talking right now about a long-term plan, I would support going with the premium and not the premium plus, because I think that covering more students is important. However, because this is a pilot and because the primary purpose is data collection, in other words, this is not the last we're going to hear about this. And therefore, I think that the premium plus, for the purposes of figuring out what the needs and what the desires of our students are, is the right move. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I think that Sarah raised her hand next.
Cool, thank you. So I have a sort of completely opposite opinion from that, although like I understand that perspective. Or I sort of just want to toss this perspective out there too. Like, yes, it makes sense to go with the premium plus if we're thinking of, okay, this is a pilot and we're doing data collection. But if we're thinking of it from the perspective of, okay, we're here to help our students, and in this exact moment, in this pandemic, there could be 250 students who really need this. Those 50 students that might be excluded if the premium plan could have done a lot better if they had access to this. So that's just my perspective.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your perspective. Lakita.
Hi, so I was just gonna say I would like to support the annual premium plus plan just because if we look at it logistically, in the event that someone, let's say, goes to one or two sessions, decides they don't want to continue with it, we should definitely advertise that if you're not interested, please deactivate your account so that someone else can hopefully sign up for and go forward with it. And also with more sessions, it becomes more clear how they feel about, doing these sort of conversations online, especially in a virtual environment, because that is different from when you're in person. It also provides more time for people to voice out their opinions, gather things around, and also for whoever they speak with to sort of understand everything. Because I feel like as someone who's been in such conversations myself, one or two meetings is not going to be enough. And if we go with the annual premium plan, 3 conversations, I feel like are going to be less productive than let's say 6 conversations if the student fully goes through the 3-month plan.
Thank you, Lakita. Anyone else? I'm gonna circle back to you, Ben. I want to let everyone who hasn't yet spoken speak before we return to you. So, Irene, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Louise. So I'm not going to voice an opinion. I just want to bring up 2 points for consideration. So the first being that if we were to consider the annual premium plus plan for this first trial run, the positive there is that, this may be a very particular time where we think that students need an additional, measure. So having them more just because everyone is isolated, that might be something to consider. But at the same time, with the fact that we may not be able to sustain that long term, I think it's also important to consider what we are providing with the notion of what might be, taken away later on. So what I'm trying to say is that we don't want to provide something for students and then have to take that away. I would rather provide something and know that we can continue providing it if we choose to keep it. But again, this is a very unique point in time and students may have a greater need. So 2 points for consideration, and I will yield my time now.
Thank you, Irene. Are there any speakers who have not yet spoken who care to posit a point of debate on this topic? Seeing none, Ben, feel free to go again.
Yeah, first of all, just to provide a little counterpoint to Lakita, the live video session a month is, from my understanding, just a part. Both of these plans include unlimited, basically texting with your therapist. And I also then have a question for Fabio or Becky, which was prompted by Sarah's point, which is, let's say theoretically we roll out one of these plans and within a week we've reached our cap of students. How quickly could we then roll out something more long term. If we find that the demand far outstrips the supply, how quickly and what would it look like for us to very quickly roll out something a little bit more permanent and a little more concrete?
I think that was a question for the authors at the end there. Sorry, I was checking something else while you spoke. My bad.
It was, yes.
Okay, so if the authors would like to respond, feel free to do so.
Becky, would you like to take this or give something to add?
I mean, I can try. I think that it will be important for us to reflect on the data that we find from this 3-month, and then as a group make the decision where to go. I want it to be a success. I want to help as many as we can. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure. Maybe Fabio, you're more sure, but if that were to happen, because we do still, I think, want to finish out the 3 months, and see where then to go from there. Let's say all those people signed up, but God forbid they weren't happy with it, or it wasn't effective for them, then again we put forward all that money maybe too quickly. So I'm trying to be very careful about it. And I don't know if that was a clear answer, but Fabio, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, Becky, you really hit this home. Like, it's going to take time for us to digest the data after 3 months. And that's why, we'll be framing this to the student body in 2 different ways. First, it's a pilot for a potential annual subscription. Secondly, though, we're going to remind everybody that it's a pilot and will expire after 3 months. And we'll be framing it so that, we're providing this because of COVID. Right now, a lot of us are working remotely. Becky used the example of not being able to, students not being able to speak to their therapist privately because they're home and whatnot. So, because of all those things, we looked into obtaining something. And this something happens to be a pilot for a potential annual subscription longer down the road. I don't think we would be able to roll out an annual subscription quickly after this 3 months expires. So I would, plan on at least a couple of months, probably more like 6, before something can get rolled out for the entire student body, just because it's going to require analysis of the data, other university partners to get involved with the cost. So it's going to be a long-term project. And if we were to do that, we would really need everybody, like everybody here on the Senate right now. We would need everybody backing us to do that with the university administration, because it's a massive cost for both us and them. Even if we were to split it, the university is not gonna, I cannot imagine the university forking over $100,000 roughly without, being pushed to do so. So this is a big initiative. If we were to go through with this, big plans, I personally am very much in favor of it, but it's gonna require a lot of work from everyone, just as a disclaimer.
Thank you. Are there any further points of discussion at this time? Seeing none, we're going to move to a vote. Let me stop sharing my screen so I'll move to the vote. If anyone has anything they'd like to say while I set up the vote, please raise your hand and I'll recognize you.
Maybe just to clarify that, again, we're not voting on whether we're going to go through with the service or not, but just between the 2 plans.
So the cost was $320 for 200 people. That's the first one, and then the second one is it's $320 for 250. Or I want to make the plans as clear as possible and not just say plan 1.
Yeah, it's $320 for 250 students, and then the other one is $400 for 200 students. The added cost gets you a second live video session a month, which is 30 minutes, and each plan runs for 3 months.
Okay, I think that I've made the voting as clear as possible. Let me just remove this. I don't know if I can. Okay, it removed. All right. The poll will be open for 2 minutes. This poll will also be used for attendance. So there are the three options. Option A, it's the $320 per student plan for 250 students with one session. Option B, the 400 for 200 students, the $400 for 200 students with the two plans. And then the third option is not a senator. Please vote that if you're not a senator. Okay. This will be open for 2 minutes. You have a minute and a half left. Please, everyone, vote if you'd like to cast a vote on this matter. Actually, no matter what, please vote just so we have attendance. We'll wait here for the remaining minute because it's such a short time. Please answer if you've wanted to. We have everyone but four people now have answered. The remaining three, please answer. We have 15 seconds remaining. All right, two people are in progress. I hope that it submits them. Okay. Well, the two votes wouldn't have changed the outcome. In a vote of, sorry, it needs to publish, so it won't let me see all the numbers. But it's 10 to 19. So the second option, is going to be moved forward with as the Senate's recommendation. And then we have 15 non-senators in the room currently. And oh, now it's 10 to 19. Just for clarification, I'll send this over with the minutes so that we have a more thorough thing. We pull back up the agenda. Escape. Congratulations. That was your intended plan. If not, we'll continue to discuss this moving forward. I'm sure Fabio and Becky will keep us in the loop. Let me return to
the 200, Luis. Is that what you're saying, past?
Yes, the two videos for 200 students at $400 per student is the plan that passed. So plan B. All right, I'll return to sharing my screen. Let me get that open. And now let me wait for the to go away. Here we are. We have one final piece of legislation on our agenda, then two pieces of discussion and two quick announcements. So we will now move into this piece of legislation, and I will yield to the author to present it.
Hey everyone. So this is a statement of position regarding misinformation of the Uyghur genocide in China. I just want to talk a little bit about how this legislation came about. A Muslim identifying student actually reached out to me with a petition from the Muslim Student Association at UConn. And they created a petition demanding that the university used its platform to condemn the genocide happening where millions of Uyghurs are being put into concentration camps in China, and they're being tortured and sterilized and forced into labor. And they want to bring to attention the misinformation that's being spread amongst faculty and students. They made an accusation towards the UConn chapter of Chinese Students and Scholars Association. And this accusation was basically saying that this chapter is sending emails denying the occurrence against Uyghur people in China. I'm going to yield to Lakita so she can talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, do you mind scrolling to the top? I can just sort of walk everyone through. I'm not sure, I hope everyone has had the chance to read it, but I do want to go over it just so that it's easier. The beginning bit, we talk about like everything that's been happening, the fact that, even the US Senate has, accepted that this is currently happening. Going down, a copy of the email that the CSSA chapter of UConn sent out to faculty has been attached in the legislation, so anyone that wants to read that can. Essentially, in the email, what they were doing was that they were saying that this is not true and that there are many mosques in China, and that sort of refutes it. And also, this is all due to stopping anti-terrorism. And that's where it's concerning because many reputable news outlets have confirmed that these occurrences are occurring in China, and many students have stated that this makes them feel unsafe on campus. And considering that sections 5 and 7 of our Student Bill of Rights mandate that we work to create a safe, inclusive, and welcoming environment as well as positive campus culture, and especially also considering that we as a campus have seen a number of anti-Semitic and other bias incidents occurring on campus, and students feeling unsafe and affected by what's happening because they feel unsafe and unheard. We wanted to look more into this, and it also isn't clear how the university currently handles investigations surrounding misinformation that targets specific groups and whether the entire community is made aware of incidents when they do occur. And in addition, on top of that, considering that UConn currently has multi-million-dollar deals with contracts with Nike and a upcoming contract with either Coca-Cola or Pepsi or another such big company in regards to exclusive pouring rights up for negotiation, we felt like this is the kind of time to make sure that, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me provide some context. Both Nike and Coca-Cola are among major companies that are lobbying in Congress against weakening a bipartisan bill that essentially would ban imported goods made with forced labor in the China's Xinjiang region against that uses Uyghur labor. And considering also that UConn is a member of the worker rights consortium, which has pledged to avoid being involved in Uyghur labor, we wanted to bring it to UConn's attention formally that this is happening and seeing, what we can sort of do, because in the conversations to reassess our deals with companies like Nike and Coca-Cola, we want to make sure that active conversations occur in terms of how they tackle the issue of forced labor and what essentially they are doing to stop this, and also make sure that we don't stand with companies who are profiting off of human rights violations. In addition, we also want to see USG supporting UConn MSA's call and UConn to uphold its values and honor the commitment to human rights that it has made, as well as, an investigation being opened against the CSS to determine whether these actions constitute a violation of the Student Bill of Rights, and also making sure that the investigation protocol for such incidents regarding misinformation is clarified to the students.
Yeah, and we just, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think the entire point is to make sure that UConn provides our students with a safe and inclusive environment, whether it be to who we negotiate with, whether it be what our organizations put out, and whether it be how USG deals with these accusations.
Thank you to the authors. I'm now soliciting questions for the authors specifically. We will move into discussion once questions have elapsed. The first hand up is Yibin.
Sure. I fully understand Lakita and also author's passion and support for everyone's human rights. So my question is for freedom of expression, why you guys think CISA has us Chinese students and us scholars association has violated the students' bills of rights?
Lakita, do you want to take this or do you want?
You can take the question first.
Actually, Luis, do you want to open up the email?
Oh, okay. I can do that if you'd like. Which one is it? Is it 3 or 4? Or is it further up?
It's 2.
It's 2 per.
So we actually reached out to the Muslim Students Association regarding the petition, and they basically put out an art contest regarding the genocide to raise awareness for the Uyghur people and, the forced labor and sterilizations and everything. And in as a rebuttal, the Chinese Students and Scholars Association put out this letter to the Political Science and Philosophy Department. So if you guys want to read this before saying anything or asking any more questions.
I was just going to say that
Oh, sorry. We're gonna continue with moderated debate. Neha, please raise your hand, and I'll get to you pretty soon. Unless it's kind of to add to that answer in a clerical sense.
Can I just add? I'm so sorry. I just wanted to make.
Lakita.
So I was just going to say, it wasn't necessarily to accuse or of the Chinese Student and Scholar Association of anything, but they did put out an email where they called what MSA put out slander, and put out different information that it is misleading because reputable news sources have determined that there is ethnic cleansing, even though it hasn't formally been called genocide, out there, that this is all happening. And we just felt like what was in the email itself can be misleading to people, especially when they're not fully informed of what was going on. And we felt that, again, this is not USG saying that it is happening. We just want to open an investigation and make sure that any miscommunication has been clarified.
Thank you, Lakita.
Can
I'll
I make a point of diversity?
You may if you'd like. I will forward this along to our Chief Diversity Officer for his consideration. What is there a particular reason, or is it just based on the conversation at hand?
I think it's just a couple of reasons. I think the conversation speaks for itself. So.
Okay, thank you. I will use my authority in the rules to forward this to the Chief Diversity Officer, as I would like it to be his decision, not mine, in this particular case.
Hey folks, new rules in action. Here's my take on this. Later in this legislation, if you take a look down at the bottom, it seems to call for me to run an investigation the same way we would do any of the other bias-related stuff that happened earlier in the meeting. Think back to the protocol that we took a look at. I think by the time we conduct that, then we would be able to definitively say as an organization whether or not we find a violation of the Student Bill of Rights. I hope that gets at what Fabio was asking, or Fabio was looking for.
Thank you for the clarification there, Damani. I noticed a couple of hands went down after the point of diversity. If anyone, okay. We'll go to Ben and then Mitchell. For questions here, not anything else. Questions.
Yes, for questions. I have a line of questions relating to this very thing.
Limited to 1 or 2 for now, because we have a number of speakers.
Okay. All right. First of all, the language in the legislation is pretty clear that we're saying that these deny the occurrences against Uyghur people. And I'm just wondering how you got to that conclusion, because I read this letter, and in fact, it does specifically acknowledge, quote, human rights violations facing the entire Uyghur population within China. So from my reading of this, at least, it acknowledges that this happens, and it says, this is an issue, but we're focusing on something else. And so I'm wondering how you got from there to this denies the occurrences.
Either of the authors are welcome to answer that question.
So it's not that they necessarily deny it, but that they put the entire again, like, this is only like from what we have been told by MSA, and like this is not our words entirely. Like, this, the whole point of this is to open up investigation and open up conversation, but it focuses on anti-terrorism as the reason for the mass incarcerations and everything that's been happening, which, you know, you can't put everything on that specific thing. And considering the kind of events that have been happening there, and like what news articles have been reporting, this is, you know, what has been called as religious persecution. And that's why it goes beyond, like, you know, acknowledgement, but the rationale behind why things have been happening the way they are is essentially where it gets tricky. And I don't want to say anything that can be hurtful to or harmful to any group, which is why I don't want to get too much into things, but that is where the whole rationale for the legislation came up.
I understand that, but, you know, as a follow-up question, if we don't have specific evidence that we're saying that that the CSSA is denying the occurrences, then why are we then essentially spreading unsubstantiated rumors? Why should USG basically spread and give credence to unsubstantiated rumors about a tier 2 organization in its legislation?
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
Okay, so I wouldn't call this unsubstantiated just because the email that the Muslim Students Association put out was an art contest to raise awareness to this genocide. In retaliation, this organization said that the email was baseless, alarmist, and full of prejudice against China's domestic political affairs. So calling a genocide baseless is really questionable, and I think should be deferred to the Chief Diversity Officer for investigation.
Also, students have raised concerns, and it is our job as USG, whether, you know, we agree with the political opinion or not, to investigate such matters.
Thank you. I will, before we continue with this line of questioning, allow motions because I have been informed that there is a motion or so on the floor. So if you have a motion, please indicate so now. I can't tell who's for motions and who's for questions. Neha, are you a motion or a comment?
Comment.
Okay, we'll get to you after we do a motion. Sarah, are you a motion or a comment?
Motion.
Okay, Sarah, feel free to make your motion.
I'm just gonna motion to say that we add the word allegedly before the word deny, because I think that clarifies that USG is in no way saying that that is exactly what happened, but we're just saying that that's what people said is what happened.
Where is this going to happen? So
Yes,
sorry.
can you indicate the whereas, and I'll open it
So
in a
it's
commentable thing.
the Yukon chapter. So before the last line when it says sending of emails, so after the word which and before the word deny, just add allegedly.
Can you tell me the page? I'm sorry, I'm not as well versed as I'd like to be. The first page?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not seeing it, Sarah. Can one more?
Specific, but I was looking exactly at it. So let me count down. 7. Where?
7?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So whereas, and then where do you want to add this word?
So they have been directly.
One moment, Lakita. Sorry, I just, in the name of clarity, I'd like to get the motion down, and then we can accept a second. Then we can enter into discussion, and then the motion can be taken back by the author, or it can be proceeded to be voted on or taken as friendly at our whim. Sorry, I just want to keep some semblance of order here. I don't mean to cut anyone off unjustly. Is it this clause you speak of, Sarah?
The previous one. I think
It's
when I
this
said
one.
7. Yes.
Okay. Has allegedly?
What? Yeah.
Has allegedly been accused of?
No. So the last part, the last line of it, so when it says sending of emails, which just allegedly there.
Which allegedly.
Yes.
Okay. I can't spell. I do apologize. All right. Here we are. Is there a second to this motion? A second. I heard a second. Can you say your name, whoever seconded?
Irene seconds.
Irene seconds. Wonderful. So now that we are in this, I assume it's not taken as friendly.
I'm actually taking it as friendly.
You're taking it as friendly. Okay. So seeing as it's friendly, okay, it is so. Feel free to click the checkbox, Lakeith, since I don't seem to have editing access. All right. We will now return to discussion now that this amendment has been made. And I will continue going down the list as was before. Please re-raise your hand. Ben, I let you ask 2 questions. We'll get back to you after we get through a few more questions.
Questions or discussion?
I have a
This
motion.
is question. You have a motion? I want to do a few more questions and then we can return to motions. I do apologize, Ben. Neha, feel free to ask a question.
So this isn't too much of a question. So I have family from Asia, India and Pakistan. So I have seen genocides happen. I've done a lot of research about this and I've heard about it from family. My brother has traveled across Asia. So I want to bring in just this perspective of we are not pointing fingers. When you're looking at human rights violations, let's not point fingers. When we see things like this happen, there's a lot of people who have contributed to a genocide coming. When you read the letter, you're seeing upset and frustration from both sides, which is all valid. We see frustration from the MSA, and I really hope that they were represented through you guys, or if you guys had talked to them to get direct quotes and just representation for what they want. But speaking on what they're saying is they're hurt. They're hearing about people just because of religion being hurt, and then the Chinese Student Association is hurt because they might not completely align with what's happening. They might have an insight to what the government is doing. We don't really know fully everything, but we do know that there are people being hurt. We know that terrorist groups have hurt them, and we know that there's a genocide happening. So both sides are hurt right now. It's not good to point the finger. All this is looking at is opening up an investigation, and I don't think that's bad. I think it's just going to get more information. And if that information is hurting you, then that's some reevaluation you need to do, because right now a lot of people are hurt. We need to take a step back. We need to let the investigation happen because we don't want more people hurt on both sides. We've seen a lot of Islamophobia happen in this country. We've seen a lot of xenophobia happen in this country. All of it sparked around the same time. I'm an Asian. I understand how tough this is. I just think that this is a time for us to recognize that hurt, take a step back, and just let the investigation happen. That's it.
Thank you, Neha. We will now return to questions. So Elliot, please ask your question. If
Yeah,
you're here.
it's more like a comment. Oh, yeah, it's a question as well. I
Okay.
just want to
If it's a comment, we'll get to it later, but please form it as a question for now.
Okay, so my question is when I noticed that you on one of the term suggested that the U.S. senators have introduced a legislation to declare that China is committing genocide against and other mainly Muslim ethnic group, blah blah blah. And I just feel like when a legislation has not been approved, it's not appropriate to like quote that in the legislation. That's just my question. Yeah.
Sorry, just so I understand, is it that it wasn't quoted, or is it that conversations are still happening and that it hasn't formally been approved?
It hasn't been formally approved. It's just been introduced to the Congress.
Okay.
All right. Feel free to respond to it as a question, Lakita, or as an answer to that question.
So, if you give me a couple minutes, I can look up and see what was like the article that I found it in. And actually, let me just.
I
I
actually
can remove this for now. If that would be better, like I can remove this for now.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will return to Ben. Is this questions or comments?
It's a motion.
It's a motion. All right, I'll allow your motion at this point in time.
I move to strike whereas clauses 7 and 8.
Okay.
Because as Neha said, this is not about finger pointing. And I feel that in the totality of clauses 7 and 8, they point fingers. Clause 7 basically says that the CSSA has been accused of spreading information, which, while technically a factual statement, the fact that we would do that essentially lends credence to that and lends credence to the claim that the CSSA denies the occurrences against the Uyghur people in China, which is unsubstantiated by the evidence that is presented in this legislation. And then the second one seeks to basically make this CSSA guilty by association by pointing out what other CSSAs have done, which is frankly unrelated to what our CSSA does, and frankly I think makes an effort to make our CSSA guilty by association, and I don't think that that's fair.
Thank you, Ben. In the future, when making amendments, please just suggest the amendment, and then after it is seconded or not, we will move directly to you for more of a justification. Just in the effort of time. No worries. We haven't done this. We haven't made this many amendments so far in the semester, so everyone's still getting used to it. Is there a second to this amendment?
Second. I second. Fabio seconds.
Okay, Fabio seconds. That is now technically allowed.
Excuse me, Luis. Point of
Yes.
order.
Go for it.
Have voting rights in this body and can't second things.
To my understanding, Caleb, and I've spoken about this with the chief diversity officer a bit, he does have motioning rights in this body. So I don't know if that includes seconding rights, and I would appreciate if you could make that clear to me.
I guess I will speak with the chief diversity officer offline about that. But go ahead.
All right, I will solicit a second. Just in the interest of ensuring that we're following all the rules. Is there a senator in the body who wishes to second this amendment?
I'll second the amendment, Irene.
Irene. Thank you, Irene. Is this amendment taken as friendly by the authors?
Is it possible to take part? Oh, sorry, Janine, I go first.
I just like to discuss just because I don't think this is pointing any fingers. The reason that this legislation...
You can discuss in a moment. I just asked if this was friendly. We will now move into a speakers list, and I will allow you to speak on that. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to move as efficiently as possible.
Okay.
I thank you. And now I'll go through. Everyone, lower your hand, or I'll lower the hands. Raise your hand if you'd like to speak on this particular motion. Okay. We're gonna go to Chris and then Janana first.
Hi. So I'm just confused on what the issue is with saying that the CSSA has denied the occurrence if in the last sentence of the letter, if you want to pull it up, Lewis, they say that the statements were baseless, alarmist, and they are full of prejudice against China's domestic political affairs. Like, that sounds like they're denying it to me.
All right, thank you for that point of discussion. Janana.
So the point where, whereas clause 7, the reason that this legislation came to the reason we made this legislation is because a student reached out to us saying that they felt unsafe because the Uyghur people, the genocide is happening, and a chapter, an organization on our campus is denying it. And that was a petition that was brought to our attention. So an organization, a group of people have accused this organization of doing this, have accused them of spreading misinformation. As a result, we are asking that the USG defers to the chief diversity officer so we can open up a formal investigation. That is why we're doing this. And I feel like this highlights what we're doing. It's not pointing fingers. It's just saying, this is what's happened. They have been accused. That is why we want to do this.
All right, thank you. I'm going to cap the speaker list where it is for this particular amendment. Any further hands will not be recognized to discuss this particular amendment. When we return to discussion, all those with their hands can re-raise their hands. We'll move to Fabio.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, I support this amendment. And the reason why is because we're talking about two USG-funded Tier 2 organizations here. And for those of you that are unaware, in the past, USG has dealt with issues particularly related to funding for potential and possible cultural discrimination and other forms of discrimination. And it has taken a lot of work through my office and other comptrollers before me, USG as a whole, really to restore faith in certain organizations that USG funding is not discriminatory and that we truly are equal and transparent and accessible for all Tier 2 organizations. The problem that I have with this piece of legislation is, since it specifically references two organizations and, in my opinion, seems to point fingers at CSSA in a way that it shouldn't at this stage, at least, before an investigation is completed. I don't want the passage of this legislation to disrupt that progress that USG has made with all organizations pertaining to USG funding. So I support this amendment, and I hope that perhaps another senator or even I myself make an amendment to really strike any clause, any reference to the MSA or the CSSA, aside from calling for an investigation. I feel like the rest of it really inflames the issue at this stage. And again, I really don't want to see either of these organizations losing faith in the Tier 2 funding process because of a piece of legislation that the Student Senate passes. So thank you.
Thank you, Fabio. Lakita, I'm going to allow you to speak last, and Ben, I'm going to allow you to speak second to last on this amendment, seeing as you are the author and the maker of the motion. We will now move to Cal.
Hi. So, I'm a little dubious about like striking the two clauses from the document, of course, because again, while I'm not sure exactly if this is pointing fingers. However, it sounds more as if by striking these two, we are more so trying to appease the CSSA and possibly hurting the MSA. And in what way can we go through with this and go through with the investigation that will allow appeasement for both organizations? Because isn't the MSA's like main stance is that they are allegedly accusing the CSSA for allegedly denying the occurrence of the Uyghur people. I was just wondering, like, how are we going to also how do I say this? Essentially like focus on like the concerns of the MSA. I feel like a little bit too much has been focused on the CSSA, and while their concerns are of course valid, I feel that we're kind of worrying a little too much about the CSSA and almost ignoring the MSA's concerns, because really all of this boils down to that they feel that their existence may have been denied by this email.
Thank you, Cal. We'll now move to Chief Diversity Officer Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a few things I want to touch on. The first is at the scope and the intent of the legislation. I think that there might be two intents in here that I think we might be conflating or mixing together a bit. The first seems to be to call on companies like or call on the university to reevaluate their financial relationships with companies like Nike and Coca-Cola, potentially Pepsi, due to their profiting or benefiting from forced labor as it pertains to the Uyghur genocide. There seems to be a second intent here as well, to identify and open an investigation into the Chinese Students and Scholars Association as it pertains to claims that group has made regarding the existence or inexistence of the Uyghur genocide. I think that we could clarify these matters in a few ways. One, it could be separate pieces of legislation, or two, investigations can be opened up in a number of ways. We can, using if you all want to take a look at the funding policies we passed earlier tonight, this was not a new change, but within our funding apparatus, there are systems for triggering and enforcing sanctions in that way. Any undergraduate student can send the Chief Justice an email alleging various violations, and they can proceed with an investigation by the process outlined in our Constitution. Or you can all take a look at the email that Luis sent out today. Take a look down at the bottom, and there's a form there that you can fill out, and that would trigger an investigation with me along the terms of the bylaw that we approved earlier tonight. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of those alternative venues for investigations, and then also kind of clarify that I think there might be two separate intents in here. Thank you.
Thank you, Damani. We're going to cut speakers here. We're the author and then the maker of the motion. So we'll go to Lakita. No, wait, I said Ben then Lakita before. So Ben first.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you, everyone, for discussing this. First of all, I want to be very clear that I think that this does point fingers. And looking at Clause 7 first, we see that there is an accusation, yes, but, and it is factual that they have been accused. No one's denying that. But USG has a platform. We have a base. We have social media. We are a well-known Tier 3 organization. And with that platform comes a certain responsibility. I believe strongly that we should not be levying accusations and giving a platform to unsubstantiated allegations. And that, I think, is what we're doing here. Second of all, none of the responses so far have addressed Clause 8. Several CSSA chapters at other universities have been known for spreading propaganda. This type of propaganda. So we're saying that the same type of propaganda that our CSSA is using, we're accusing our CSSA of propaganda. And we're also commenting on other colleges' student organizations, which is frankly outside the scope of this body and outside the scope of UConn. What other CSSAs do and what our CSSA does is not the same thing. And so by saying that other CSSAs are guilty of it, what we're essentially trying to do is conflate the two things. We're trying to make our CSSA guilty by association. I don't think that's right. To address what Senator Bergen said, it is true that the CSSA called something baseless, alarmist, and full of prejudices, but we don't see what exactly they're responding to. I don't see a copy of the original email. I don't know what they're responding to, but I strongly believe that if we don't know, we should not be elevating these kinds of allegations. And finally, to address what Senator Benedict's said, this isn't about appeasement. This is to echo what our comptroller said. This is about not spreading rumors and not spreading unsubstantiated allegations against the student organizations that we fund. This is about being impartial when we don't know all the facts. Now, a student feels unsafe, and that's bad. And when that happens, we should investigate. But until we investigate and until we find all the facts, we should not be levying accusations made by student organizations against other student organizations. We should not be taking a side, and we certainly should not be trying to conflate the actions of our organizations with other bad things that other unconnected people have done. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Kelty. Lakita, feel free to go. Or
So,
Senator Athena.
yeah, sure. So I was actually I'd begin by saying that the the behavior that expressed by several chapters, the rationale behind putting it is that the organization itself, while it is a UConn organization, it is also a chapter at the UConn community. The organization itself has been known to do this sort of behavior, and I do recognize that perhaps that is not appropriate to put it here, and so I would actually like to strike that clause myself. And since I'm the author, I assume it is going to be friendly. But as part of the whereas clause in regards to the accusation made against the Chinese Student and Scholars Association, the whole point, or not part of this legislation's purpose, is to open up an investigation. And when we don't include why we're opening up the investigation, that doesn't seem appropriate. And also saying that this isn't an unsubstantiated allegation. An allegation has been put forth. I do have email conversation with MSA asking for us to do something, and that they felt hurt over what has happened, and therefore I feel it is within our right to say that this has happened. We are not accusing them directly. We are literally saying that they have been accused, and the whole point of this isn't a name call. It is to open up an investigation, but also make sure that there is a rationale in the documentation that this is the reason that the investigation is being opened up.
Thank you to all those who gave discussion on this. We will not be accepting any more speakers for this line of discussion, and I will make one procedural thing clear before I continue with a vote. Procedurally, if we want to go forward here, we have two options. Option one, we vote on this as is. Option two, Senator Kelty can choose to amend his amendment to only include what Senator Athena had just mentioned. I will now ask Senator Kelty if that is something he's interested in, and assuming not, we will move into a vote.
I think I'd like the amendment to stand as is.
Okay, since the amendment is standing as is, we will now move into a vote. I know that we can't do unanimous consent since it's not friendly, so I will have to stop sharing my screen once more, and we will move into a vote on this particular topic. Yeah. Neha, is this a motion, a point? There's no speakers at this time while the poll is going to be created.
No, are we voting on the amendment or the whole legislation?
This is on the amendment. This is on the amendment to strike those two clauses that have been on my screen for the past 5-10 minutes. Yes, save the poll question. Sorry, I have to save the previous poll before I can start this one. It is 12-2. Save. Yes. 12-2. Save. All right. I'm now creating the other poll. Amendment to strike the two clauses. For, against.
Wait, Luis, if I said that I don't mind the striking of the clause 8, does that mean we would need to vote on that too? Because I'm actually saying that I will get rid of it right now.
So what procedurally, because we're in the middle of this motion, the only person who can kind of change the motion is the author, to my understanding of the Douglas Rules of Order. And if Chief Diversity Officer Douglas would like to correct me on his reading of his rules, he's giving me a thumbs up, so I think he's agreeing with my interpretation. Essentially, what we have to do here is, after this is done, I will recognize you first, and we will then make an amendment. We will take a second, and then if it's taken as friendly, it will be the case. So that is the path forward that I have here. Is that an acceptable path?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I have it here now. So the amendment to strike the two clauses, I hope everyone knows what that is. As soon as I start this, I will reshare my screen. So I've opened it. Please click on the appropriate line item corresponding to what you want to do. I don't want to change the recording. I want to reshare my screen. Let's see. I don't have a way to check the polling while I have this here. So I will count 2 minutes in my head. Oh, can I open it like that? I can. Wonderful. So I no longer have to close the screen sharing in order to do polling, which I'm a huge fan of. Sorry. We now have 1 minute and 30 seconds left in the polling. So once the polling is complete, we will continue going forward. We have 6 people who have yet to answer. If you are one of them, please do so. We have 1 person who is in progress, 2 people who are in progress, back down to 1. Beautiful. I've actually found that saying out the numbers makes people respond faster, so I'm going to continue to do that.
Hit submit sometimes.
Yeah. It helps. We have 1 person yet who has not started the poll. So I suppose their vote won't change the outcome of the poll. In a vote of 9 for, 13 against, and 5 abstentions, this motion fails. We will now return to regular discussion, in which I will recognize the Lakita to make her new motion.
Yeah, so I'm motioning to get rid of line 8, or clause 8.
This is the new amendment on the floor. Is there a second?
Second, Ben Kelty.
A second to Ben or Mitchell. So Ben, since he said so. Is this taken as friendly?
Yes.
Okay. So
Shannon, is it taken as friendly?
Yes.
Okay. Since the authors see it as friendly, it is so moved. We have stricken. Please accept it, one of the authors, or give me editing.
Oh
things.
yeah,
I should have editing access on all legislation that we're considering. I see Mitchell has his hand up.
We in discussion, Louise.
Yes, we are in discussion.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yes,
Okay.
we're in discussion. Raise your hand for discussion.
Awesome. I've been holding this in for a while. Lots of points have been made. I just want to, my opinion on this whole matter is at this point in time, what it seems like from the entire Senate, and while myself believe that, yes, if this email is true, I think that potentially what the Chinese Association has said is not the best thing ever, and I understand why MSA is here and wants to have us say a statement on it. But also, as a senator, I think we all have to acknowledge also that there is a specific person, and I would not envy to be that person, which is Damani, who is the diversity and outreach chair, who's supposed to handle issues like this before we all get involved in something like this. And while my personal belief is also let's push this through. We don't have all the facts. From what I can gather, we're all over the place. There's emails that, and there might be other emails that we don't know about that maybe someone like Damani would be able to discover, and then we can come out with a more clear and concise thing without any like what I'm foreseeing is potentially down the line next semester, this is a huge thing, and our organization comes out almost what can be perceived as against one of our tier 2 organizations, supporting one over the other, even though I completely acknowledge that a genocide is occurring in China with these Muslim folks, and MSA is, in my opinion, completely correct. We do have a specific commission that is supposed to look at things like this and determine things and then bring that to Senate. So personally, I feel we can't move forward with this at this point in time, as much as I may want to. And I what Neha was saying, and also Ben was saying, I fully agree, and also Fabio was saying. And I think if we are going to pass something tonight, I think it has to be something that's more tame in a way, that is acknowledging we're sending it to diversity to look at and get more information so we can make a more clear statement on this and what's been going on. Then including a lot of language that may be perceived as taking a side or something like that. I think we should acknowledge as an organization, if we want to take that stance, that there is a genocide happening. But I don't think we can acknowledge tonight, just because we haven't done a fair investigation, that the Chinese Association has done wrong or anything like that, simply on principles of how this organization is supposed to work and government at large. That, judicial system is supposed to have an investigation first, supposed to figure out facts. So I think on a concept point alone, that is what we must do tonight as an organization, even if myself or others may feel otherwise. And so, yeah, I think tonight, well, I don't know if I'll motion or something, but we can keep discussing that tonight we put forth a statement that if you guys are comfortable saying there is a genocide, we don't know exactly what's happened with issues on campus. We're moving it to diversity. They're going to take a look. We're with you, MSA, and we also understand frustrations are happening. But I don't think tonight we can pick a side, or we should necessarily. I don't know, but it's also a tricky topic because we also don't want to come out and have the MSA Association believe that we're not supporting them, because I I want to support them, and I do believe that if this is true, that is an issue that needs to be discussed. I just think that there is a process to this, and that we do have to follow that process without personal. It's hard to say that, but without my personal opinion, I have to say, hold on, guys, we got to take this to diversity first, and that's just my opinion. And I hope we can keep discussing, but yeah.
Thank you, Mitchell. I'd like, before I continue with the speakers list, to quickly reiterate CDO Douglas's points, that if any individual here feels as if this is something that should be investigated, they have every right to fill out that form that he pointed to at any point in time. The Senate can also request an investigation. I see no reason why not. But any individual can also do so. So now the decision is, do we as a Senate want to request that? And further, do we want to make the statements that this legislation is making? That is what should be discussed here. Not whether or not yes. Do we as an undergraduate student Senate support the statements made in this legislation or not? Please focus your discussion to that point. Mitchell did a wonderful job. I'm just kind of saying to preface the conversation that we will have here. Elliot.
Quick information, real quick.
Yes, Fabio.
Did we strike those two clauses? I thought you said the vote failed.
We struck one clause through a friendly amendment.
Okay.
After the vote failed.
Understood. Thank you.
We struck the second of the two for context.
Thank you.
All right. Elliot.
Well, I also think that it's not a good idea to start an investigation, because from my point of view, is that the Chinese government issued evidence, videos, and so many other photos about what happened in that area, and the Western countries news industry has exposed so many different things, and like there are so many different opinions and on this subject, and I don't think that we can do a very efficient investigation on this topic until like there is an agreement made by the majority of people on this planet. Like the Jewish people, like hurted by the Nazi, is like agreement made by most of the people on this planet, and we really just like we can condemn everything they did, but we don't think I personally don't think that we can jump into conclusion before anything, like the governments even didn't make any conclusion on this topic. So it's just personal opinions, and I feel really personally offended by some of the words used in this legislation. There's like you used misinformation so many times in this legislation, and I personally would prefer the word controversy, because there isn't right or wrong in this stage. So that's just my opinion, and I think just to present all of the international students here on this on campus, I think we all agree that we all vote and fight for human rights, but we don't think that this is what happened here. And how do I put this? We have so many information, and I just think we cannot confirm anything yet.
Thank you, Elliot. I've been made aware of a point of diversity being raised by the Chief Diversity Officer himself, and I will yield back to the Chief Diversity Officer, seeing as yes. Feel free to go ahead, Damani.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify something. There is no investigation that I could perform that would determine whether or not there is a genocide occurring in China. that is far, far beyond my purview. What my purview would be is to determine if there was misinformation being spread or propagated based on what I understand here, and if that were to constitute a violation of the Student Bill of Rights. I want to clarify that. I'm not nearly qualified to conduct a investigation that could determine whether or not a genocide was occurring in a foreign country.
Thank you, Damani, for that point of diversity. We will now move to, sorry, just one moment. My computer's acting slow. To Yibing Zhao.
Sure. Like, for the Neha saying like both sides for both CISA and also MSA students, I feel hurtful and also unsafe. And I understand like there couldn't be any investigation that's like held by USG, but I think USG like could hold a platform and like inviting representatives from both sides like to have a platform to work this issue out, because like for this legislation we only heard the voice from MSA sides, but we didn't know like how CISA have responded or like how those Chinese students feel about this issue. So I think the like necessary step for USG is like to have those two tier 2 organizations to talk with each other and to like solve these things out with each other, like to have no further conflicts with each other.
All right, the next speaker will be Sam. Please remember to keep your
I actually
discussion to
have
the
a
content of the
point.
legislation. What is your point, Lakita?
Sorry, the Dean of Students office is currently handling a mediation between both groups. This is just so that we, as well as USG, open up an investigation, look into a potential violation of Bill of Rights if there is.
Okay, I will yield
Because
once
we
more to
haven't
the
yet.
Chief Diversity Officer as he wants to clarify a point on the investigating process. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you, Luis. I want to explain something because I think it was a bit unclear. We touched upon this earlier in the night, and it was the protocol. I want to talk about what an investigation would actually look like. A moment ago, I said what it wasn't, but I figured I'd just take an opportunity to say what it was. What happens in that process is someone triggers it by filling out the form. At which point I will then meet with whoever referred, whoever started that, and then I will also sit down and meet with whoever was named, whether that's a group, whether that's a student. We sit down and talk to them. I'll take a look at anything that that they wish to provide, and then there could be further conversations that go on there. The conclusion of the process, at some point, I would have to make a determination, and the judiciary would then have to affirm that determination, whatever it may be, as to whether or not there was any kind of violation of the Student Bill of Rights, and whether or not that violation should result in sanctions. So to be clear, everyone who would be involved would absolutely be spoken to. I personally would never want to, conduct anything that could be called an investigation without speaking to all parties named. That would be wrong. That would be incorrect, and it would be incomplete. So I just wanted to clarify that it would certainly include everyone who's named. Anyone who might be tangentially connected. I wanted to make sure that, to whatever conclusion might arise from an investigation, that it would be complete and a fair exercise of due process.
Thank you, Damani, for that clarification. I'm going to now go to look at the list to see who has yet to speak in this discussion. I'm going to yield to Sam, Senator Zellin.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say this quickly because I think it kind of echoes what a lot of people have said. But I think that a whereas clause is not saying that something needs to be done. A whereas clause is just acknowledging things, and I think that most of these clauses, these clauses that I'm looking at are acknowledging truths. They're acknowledging things that have happened. Yes, they might be acknowledging accusations, which accusations are not evidence. Accusations are purely that. They're speculative, but they exist. And, I think whereas clauses are usually put there out of thoroughness and not out of, a call to act, and then therefore are what is calling to act. And I also think that if someone is going to, accuse said, those clauses and this legislation in general of misinformation, it's important to point out, I think, what is the misinformation as opposed to just saying there's a lot of misinformation here. So I think we need to think about what we're saying in the clause, like specifically what we're looking at in the clauses, that is troubling, as opposed to just kind of getting a bad feeling about it.
I'm going to propose a path forward here, and I will. Yeah, I'm going to propose a path forward here, and then I'm going to accept further points of discussion. So my suggestion at this point is twofold. First, I feel as if we already have part of the second therefore clause here addressed through previous legislation. The Coca-Cola contract, we are going to be reassessing our deal with Coca-Cola due to their environmental effects. So I think that at least half of that clause is accurate. And I feel like the deal with Nike can be forwarded along in the future. I am of the opinion that the Senate floor should be a place for disputes between two Tier 2 organizations. I believe that those avenues are pretty well delineated through our reporting form and through the Tier 2 policies to our comptroller and our funding student staff, along with our new system to report bias-related incidents that violate the Student Bill of Rights to the Chief Diversity Officer. I'm going to recommend that a senator, I can make the motion myself, but I would rather if it came from someone else. I'm going to recommend that a senator makes a motion to table as to allow us to rework this legislation in a way that is not focusing it around a disagreement between two Tier 2 organizations on campus. I further think that we could also, I genuinely think that if any undergraduate student present believes that an investigation is warranted, I implore you to fill out the form that the Chief Diversity Officer said. But I personally do not wish to use much more of the Senate's time to discuss this disagreement that is being mediated by the Dean of Students between two Tier 2 organizations. This is my statement. If anyone would like to make that motion, feel free to unmute and say so now.
Luis, I have a motion.
Go for it, Ben.
I move to table.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Is there a second to the motion to table?
I actually, before the motion and tabling happened, so just from my understanding, the biggest concern here is that the CSSA chapter is called out in the legislation, right? Or are there any other points of discussion in here where, like, any other whereas clauses are being considered to be improper in the legislation, other than that one clause, the clause 7 and the and the therefore be it resolved clause to open up an investigation? I just want that if anyone has an answer, like, please, like, because if that is the only reason, I do have a response, and I would like to give it before any motions are being made.
That's a fair enough line of discussion. So I encourage no second on this motion. I would also, at this time, like to request that everyone puts down their hands and puts them back up before we move into this. I will allow. I'm going to put down everyone's hands manually because yes. So now I will allow the author to speak to my point, and then I will begin accepting motions. So Lakita, feel free to go ahead. I don't want to move as a tyrant here. Go ahead, Lakita.
Is it all right if I go last, actually, after everyone else has spoken?
Sure.
Thank you.
I will allow 3 speakers on what I said, on the line of discussion to consider tabling this. We're going a little bit off the rules, but I think that it's the most appropriate course of action here. Mitchell.
Hey, so in response to both Luis and what she just also kind of questioned or brought to light, I don't think the issue is necessarily anything to do with your bill. Like, I don't want to say like I or anyone is necessarily like against your bill here. For me, and for I think a lot of us, is just the notion that the USG as a body is taking something up potentially before we know everything. And we're not saying that you and this bill don't know everything, or that there's been misinformation with you or at MSA or anyone. We're just deferring to the new, or what I would prefer is that we defer to the new process that we've developed through Damani and our system of diversity and all of that, rather than take it up as a body, which may cause an organization either or somebody down the line, or issues with the USG down the line, in terms of how we go about, like, why didn't we, like, the question can come up, why didn't we choose to investigate through the process that we just created and rather jumped, what some could say, jumped to immediately saying this happened without us having potentially all the facts. We don't know if we have all the facts. Maybe we do, and I this is probably all the facts. I don't mean to say you're not giving all the facts or anyone's not giving all the facts. Well, we as an organization, it's a separate issue if I guess this organization votes and says we believe that a genocide is happening with the Muslim people in China or not. Even if it is my personal belief that I do think it is happening. Oh, is that a timer? Is that me? Is that something? Luis?
Yes.
Okay. To wrap that up. No, you're good. I don't think it's necessarily an issue with any number of clauses. It's kind of just how it will be portrayed as a whole, voting on this issue before there's an investigation through Damani and the processes that we have outlined in other legislation prior when an issue like this would come up. So I hope that kind of answers your question and then kind of goes along in support of what Luis was talking about. Thank you.
Of course. And I have a point of information for the Chief Diversity Officer. So what we highlighted in other legislation previously passed, that is solely for USG members. Am I correct? And since both these tier 2 organizations are not USG members, we would have to go through the reporting process as highlighted in the further be it resolved clause, or is it an entirely different investigation process? Just so I can understand.
Yeah, there are 2 things there. The first, via the university's Inform portal, you can, if you want to seek the dissolution or a university sanction, that would be the suspension of a tier 2. That's how you would do that. The sanctions that could result from any investigation conducted through me and my office would likely be funding related, as in a suspension of funding or lack of access to certain USG spaces and or resources. Yeah, that would be the extent. At that point, I think also there's a question about whether or not USG wants to take a stance on this issue. I think, with whatever findings might result from an investigation, USG may at that time want to take a stance on this particular debate.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to recognize Senator Kelty, then I'm going to re-recognize Senator Athena, and then I will open the floor to motions.
Thank you. It's a long night. To answer Lakita's question directly, yes, I believe that at least my primary issue with this legislation is that we are getting in the middle of a fight between 2 tier 2 RSOs when we don't have all the facts, when there's already a mediation ongoing with somebody who's with an organization that's frankly more qualified than us to be leading such a mediation. And yeah, that we're getting right in the middle of this fight. And so for that reason, I would definitely support a motion to table. I'd support a motion to amend, and I'd support a motion to refer this to diversity and outreach to do more fact finding. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakita. Or Janana. Either, I'll suppose I'll allow both of you to go. My bad.
Lakita can go first. Oh.
Oh, no, you can go first.
Okay, so the entire point of this, I want everyone to recognize the point of this legislation is to have an investigation. Our entire, the point is to fact check everything. We have emails. I believe they're substantiated, and the Muslim Student Association feels attacked, and they've reached out to us to ask for our help. That is why we're asking the Chief Diversity Officer of the USG to open up an investigation to see if this is a violation of the Student Bill of Rights. We also want to reassess the deal with Nike and Coca-Cola. We want to make sure that University is clear with their process of investigation for bias incidents, surrounding misinformation, targeting groups of people. That is the three things that we want. I didn't realize, someone else mentioned that this would be a question as to whether or not a human rights violation is happening with the Uyghur people. I didn't realize this would be in question at all. But the entire point of this, in my opinion, is to start conversation from our side. Even if we fill out a form, the same thing is going to happen. The Chief Diversity Officer will be deferred to. He will open up an investigation. So I'm just concerned. Are we saying that we don't? I'm just really concerned.
All right, thank you all. I know I said I'd recognize you, Lakita, but I actually am in desperate need of the bathroom, so I'm going to call a brief 5-minute recess, maybe 10 minutes, not just for the bathroom, just because we I apologize that worded incorrectly. A brief 10-minute recess because this has been quite a lengthy conversation, and I want to be sure we're all going about it with a clear and level head. So thank you all. The 10-minute recess begins now. We will reconvene at 9:15. Please remain in the call, but feel free to get up, move around, stretch your legs. We will reconvene soon. Thank you.
Does anyone know if we choose to table this, will that mean we can't vote on it until next Senate session, which is in like 2 months?
That's correct.
Yeah. Unless I call an emergency Senate, which is unlikely.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And would Damani be able to carry out an investigation over the winter? Damani? Is that? I don't know.
If someone reports it, like Damani can do investigations without a motion of a majority of the Senate. We established that in the legislation that we voted on earlier. Remember earlier? I have an 8 a.m. final tomorrow. It's fun. So how we all doing?
Ben, you started a conversation. I'll join. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten dinner yet. Has anybody eaten? Does anybody eat during Senate? I kind of wanted to know
Apparently, I cooked during Senate, and that fucked me up.
That didn't work too well.
I started cooking a lot because that's what life came to. Where to eat, I had to cook. And it was nighttime, and my dad sleeps by 7 p.m. and so he asked me to make dinner for the family. And what do you say to that? No, I want to be fed too. So I started to make dinner. And yeah, but
What did you make?
I made breakfast for dinner because I didn't have breakfast in the morning because I was like out. So I made
Breakfast for dinner
veggie
is the
sausage,
best.
eggs, avocado, and toast. I'm a vegetarian, but yesterday I made like stir fry, and then so I cook like every day.
Sounds awesome. I often eat during Senate, but I knew that I would be involved a lot in this Senate, and so I decided to, keep my video on. And I was eating during internal yesterday. You remember when I kept turning off my camera? That was why.
Oh, wow.
Eating.
I was like gonna paint during the Senate to like, soothe my mind, and then I was like, because I'm like Just trying to keep sane, but I don't want to get out of bed. But
I feel that I want to go back to bed.
Mitchell, I love that you are so new. I mean, with you too, Ben. And you guys are so vocal. Like, that's awesome. That makes me so happy to hear people vocal, like, just right off the bat.
I don't think emotionally I ever really left my high school debate team.
I introduced you to the team, bro. Let's go
You
back to
totally
that.
did. That was you.
Irene and I debated against each other.
Oh my
and,
God, yeah, they don't know that.
It was my first ever debate in high school. And Irene was the captain of her debate team as like a junior. And she looked so cute. She was so good. And I was like a nervous ass person. Like, what the fuck am I doing in this debate thing? Like, I just got pushed into it. There's like 6 people on the debate team. We don't have a coach. And Irene destroyed me. And she comes up to me after, you did so well for your first debate. And I was like, girl, thank you. You made me happy. And then we became friends. And since then, but you destroyed me in that debate. I remember being so impressed.
I honestly don't even. I just remember talking in the bathroom. We like met up, and then I saw you like in move-in day when we moved into Buckley. Which, by the way, Ben is a shippy, so I just wanted to put that out there so you know.
Shippy has a patio, Irene.
There's a rivalry between those two buildings. I didn't even know that. That's
Shippy
so.
parties a lot more, so I'm not gonna front. I was in Shippy significantly more than I was in Buckley. I'm a Shippy fan, although Buckley has a dining hall.
Although she lived in Buckley.
Yeah, like
Buckley
I went
has
to
the
dining hall
worst
in my
dining
pajamas.
hall in Yukon. That's not a brag.
Which one?
Yes, they still get
Buckley.
pancakes.
You can get pancakes at literally anywhere else.
Exactly, but I can go in my pajamas without putting on a bra or sweatshirt.
Bold of you to assume I didn't walk to South in my pajamas at least 3 times this year.
Oh, you don't get cold. That's a part of being of the race that's not.
No, I don't get cold because my dad keeps the house at 62 degrees in this winter.
No, I get cold so quick.
You have to adapt or you freeze.
I don't know, but it just makes me happy to see you guys so vocal. Fabio, how come your camera is always looking at like a fisheye view? Like, where is it to be looking down at you?
I'm on an iMac. It's the camera's at the top, like on like old, like on old computers, it used to be at the top.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
I thought
that's
he had,
why
like, a
I've never.
computer.
I look cross-eyed all the time because I'm staring at the screen, like looking at all your faces, and my camera's like 6 inches above where I'm looking. So,
You know, I think you look awesome.
well, sometimes I try to say to myself, like, look at the camera, look at the camera. But it's awkward because like all these faces are there, and you want to like make eye contact, but it's not really eye contact, of course.
I
When you make eye contact, what do you look like?
Like when I look at you guys,
Mm-hmm.
like what I look like now. And then when you're on the
not
big
bad.
screen, it's like this.
I use 2 monitors, so if I'm ever looking like to the left, it's chances are like your faces are over here, and I'm like, I forget I should be looking at my camera. Like Noah knows this. Every time I external, like it pops up. It's really annoying. It like WebEx and the rest of the things start on the other like screen, and then I gotta drag them over. But if I don't have time, like I'm looking over here, and it's like people think I'm just like looking off into space. I'm not, I promise.
I've never understood that technology feature of like dragging a document from a laptop to another laptop.
It's just they're just like tethered together. I don't know. I did that all the time. You have class going on and then you have Hulu on the other screen.
You're a Hulu, not a Netflix.
I'm whatever I feel like watching right now. I have both.
Have you all watched The Crown? Do you watch that show or no?
Yes.
I've been watching.
I'm not up to date though, so no spoilers.
Have you seen A Teacher on Hulu? It is by far the most triggering show. It's so shitty, and I cannot get enough of it.
What's it called?
A Teacher.
A Teacher?
Yeah, it's awful.
I'll look at it. Is it one of those so bad it's good sort of things?
No, it's so bad it's bad. I just like no one else finds it's like insatiable bad. Like it's like definitely like
No, not that bad.
You know what I mean, right?
My favorite show right now.
Did you say Insatiable is your favorite show?
No. I said you're offending Irene. She's like, that's my favorite show right now. What
No,
are you
no, no,
talking-
no. Honestly, it was one of those shows where it was really bad. You know Jessie, like from Disney Channel? It's her.
Oh my god.
It was literally
so
like
you know how cringy that is.
it wasn't just her. It was like the fact that there were like shows are so blatantly like bad, and I enjoy that. Like I don't watch rated R movies. I watch like rated TV 14 shitty shows.
So like Sharknado.
Alexa and Katie, even worse.
My
Never heard of it.
Let's answer your question. According to Wikipedia, Catherine Elizabeth Hudson, known for
Alexa, stop. You said Alexa.
You know, when I look up a teacher and like if you're looking for this, you might like these, really is worrying me. Anything that on the related page has 50 Shades Freed automatically makes me worried.
No, it's romantic. Did you guys watch the movie 365 Days? By far the shittiest movie. I watched it with my boyfriend thinking, like, everyone said it was so romantic. Then I looked at my boyfriend at the end and I was like, I'm not touching you. Like, it was the worst movie. Oh, goodness. I've been watching too much Netflix. I haven't started studying or doing homework for yet.
We have a reading
You
week.
have a whole reading week, yeah.
Like, really? Like, I did nothing over Thanksgiving break. It felt great.
It really is great.
Right. It wasn't, but you know, like it's terrible to get into that routine too.
Yeah, I
I
can't
started
get out of
waking up late.
Oh, I
I'm
can't.
only up by 6 or 7, and I started rolling out of bed at like 9 or 10, and 2 o'clock showed up, and I'm like, "What did I eat for breakfast?" So it's not. It was good for a little bit. Then I got home.
But my sleep schedule now, after doing nothing for Thanksgiving.
Luis, can I propose to amend the Senate rules that, like, when we hit the 2-hour mark, it's like an automatic 10-minute recess? Something similar.
If you want to write that up, I'm not opposed to it.
Okay, I made you
Putting conversation.
I'd like to
We'll think
sponsor
about
that.
it for sure. So that's definitely something I'd like to see to come to internal, kind of like the duct tape act, along the same lines, but not smoking. You know.
Well, listen, I mean, you all put me in charge of a 2/3 override for fun. Now, we may have not met before, but I'm sure you can take your guess about I'm not a very fun person. Like, we're going to be playing a lot of board games, okay?
Only 1/3 of you needs to be fun, though. Only
Right,
1/3 of you needs to be fun.
Yeah, and like when that whole is non-existent, that 1/3, no worse.
It's a funny line of thought. All right, I'm gonna end the tabling here. Not the tabling. Oof, Freudian slip. I'm gonna end the recess here, and mute you all. So I do apologize. I hope you all enjoyed your discussion. I wasn't present for most of it, but it seemed like you had a great time.
I love talking to all of you guys. I got multiple texts because people were listening to us, by the way.
Oh,
Lord.
God.
Keep getting texts.
All right, I'm
Mute
remuting
us.
everyone, and we're gonna return to business at hand. So thank you all. Here, mute all. It's not working. The mute all button doesn't work. We love to see it. Everyone mute yourselves individually. All right. So here's what is going to happen from here. During the recess, I spoke with CDO Douglas, and we're going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to lay this on the table, which is something I can unilaterally do as chair. We will return to it before the meeting is concluded. At this time, we're going to move into a new item on the agenda to vote on whether or not the Chief Diversity Officer should investigate these Tier 2 groups for a bias-related incident. I'll yield to CDO Douglas to clarify the point there, if he would like.
Yeah, if you would give me 2 seconds and direct your attention to the Senate agenda. And even if this did get approval, you probably would not be getting it due to the whole adoption. I'm not just going to take our way ahead. Yeah, that's what I'm going with there. So, folks, if you want to take a look at the Senate agenda, the motion that Luis is referring to is to direct the Chief Diversity Officer, me, to open an investigation into the CSSA to determine if these actions constitute a violation of the Student Bill of Rights. And that's being voted on as its own as its own item on the Senate agenda.
So now we're moving into this. The author has just presented it. Are there who's speaking of Christmas gifts? Please mute yourself. I apologize. Sorry for that interruption. We will now vote on. We will now discuss point 10. And seeing as there has been lengthy discussion on this topic, I'm going to limit the speakers to 3. Are there any speakers to discuss the directing the Chief Diversity Officer of the Undergraduate Student Government to open an investigation into Chinese Scholars and Students Association to determine if actions constitute a violation of the Student Bill of Rights? Ben.
I'm strongly in favor of this motion, this bill. I don't really know what this is, but I am strongly in favor of it nonetheless. I think that we all agree that an investigation should happen. We were worried about some of us were worried about getting into the weeds of an argument between 2 RSOs, especially when we don't have all the facts. This will give us all the facts, and then we will be able to, with clear heads, clear minds, and hopefully more full minds, be able to move back to this statement of position and make a more informed decision. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Kelty. Are there any other points of discussion on this particular motion? Mitchell.
I'd just like to second everything he said while also adding another point. I think when we talk about stuff like this, and it is dealing with issues around diversity and minority groups and stuff like that, that we do have to be careful and make sure that we let the MSA organization know that we are doing, like, yes, if this is what we decide to do, but yes, this is what we're doing, but we're not trying to ignore or blow off or push away this investigation or how the Senate decides the vote, because in a way, sometimes it can be perceived as gaslighting or delaying or something, whatever word you want to use. And so I'd like to also just make sure that if we do pass this, that we still acknowledge everyone's complaints and such in some capacity here. I'm sure Damani could do in his investigation either way, but yes, yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I will take one more speaker on this motion, and then we will move into a vote. If there are no further speakers, and please interrupt me before I finish this sentence if there is one. If there are no further speakers, we will then move into a vote. And I'm going to make the vote right here. So this is on directing. Oh, sorry, wrong tab. Directing the CDO to investigate. I'm opening the poll now. Here we are. I request that everyone in the lobby votes. We're off to a speedy start here, and yes. We currently have 19 individuals who have yet to answer, down to 13. Down to 2. Oh wait, no, that is incorrect. We have 5 people who have yet to answer. We are now down to 3 people who have yet to answer, one of which is in progress. Beautiful, as I was saying it. 2, and they've not started at all. But seeing as the results are overwhelming, we will, in a vote of 21 to 1 to 5, pass this legislation. Not this legislation, this line item. So yay. The Chief Diversity Officer has been duly directed. And I will be sure to follow up on that. We will now return to the motion that I had laid on the table. So now we return to the statement of position regarding misinformation. And we have a couple of proposed amendments I see. So if anyone would like to motion to make the amendments proposed, I will accept that at this point in time, or make any motion.
I would like to make the motion.
Okay, so Lakita is making this motion. Is there a second to the motion on the floor? So to be clear, the motion is to strike, and everyone is welcome and encouraged to look at this on their own device, to strike all of the outlined text in the document. So to strike this therefore clause, this whereas clause, these supplemental notes, and this whereas clause. So 3 clauses altogether are being struck. Please read the content and then consider carefully if you would like to second it. Is there a second to this motion?
I'll second this motion.
Thank you, Janana. Is this motion taken as friendly?
Yes.
Yes.
So now, okay, to be confusing because we once more moved rather quickly. What has now happened is we've taken an individual vote on the investigation done by the Chief Diversity Officer, and the authors have removed all mention of this investigation from their original bill. We are now going to continue with discussion on the bill in its current forms. Please consult the bill. If you make any mention of the clauses that have been removed, I will end that line of discussion there, because that is no longer part of the bill. So now the bill is as it stands without those 3 clauses that I just specifically mentioned. If anyone is confused, let me know, and I will try to make it less confusing. So before I open back up to discussion, I want to open to any points of inquiry to kind of like see if what I just did makes sense. Yeah, I'll move the heads to be a little bit more prominent. Can people kind of nod their head if what I'm saying makes sense, and if they understand what has changed?
Luis, do you think we could have a moment to just read through the bill in its current form? And
of course, I will provide you with another 2-minute recess. At 9:27, we will resume debate. A 2-minute recess to read the legislation in its current form. All right. That recess is concluded. Please feel free to continue reading and raise your hand once you're ready to discuss, if that is the case. But I will now open the floor to any points or discussion. I actually would encourage one of the authors to speak to the changes if they would, and how they see the document as is.
I can speak to the changes.
All right, Janana, you are recognized.
So basically what we did here was open up and like ask our students or constituents whether or not we wanted an investigation opened. And that was one of the therefore be it resolved clauses. Given that we had overwhelming support to do an investigation, just not the wording in the legislation, we removed that and we voted upon it, and that's settled. So the rest is now about whether or not we want the university to release a formal statement regarding this matter, given that there have been incidents of bias in the past during the semester. And given that the university has a multi-million-dollar deal with Nike until 2023, and Nike has been labeled as has been using Uyghur forced labor, and it's been proven.
Thank you, Janana. Are there any other points of discussion at this time? Senator Kelty.
I'd like to voice my support for this legislation in its current form. I think it does all the right things. I think it supports both the university and its students in affecting positive change. I think it's a really, really solid step in the right direction. And now that it is not specifically calling out any RSOs, getting into any sort of fights, I think that this, as it stands, is a really, really strong statement in support of human rights. And I think it'll do a lot of good.
Thank you, Senator Kelty. Sarah Hill.
Yeah, somewhat not, but I just want to voice my support of this as well and commend the authors. Lakita and I texted when she was first writing this up so she could let me know about Coke not supporting this. So I am getting happy about that. But so now we can bring that into our meeting, and I think it's really important that we get the same conversations going with Nike. And I think it's so important that we recognize injustices happening in the whole world abroad. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Are there any further points of discussion before we move into a vote on this legislation? Seeing none, I will get the polling ready once more. Give me 2 moments. I always forget to save it. And we need to save it, otherwise our minutes won't be fully concise. So important business. Down to edit. So this is on statement. There you go. I hope I spelled that all right. I'm just going to copy the title S to not confuse anyone. The poll is open once more. The time limit is the same. Please vote as you choose. On this is voting on the whole of the legislation after the amendment that was made. We have 22 outstanding responses. 21 outstanding responses. We're down to 16 outstanding responses. Down to 13. 10 outstanding. 8 outstanding. 7. To the 7 of you, please vote so that we can continue on with our agenda. Thank you very much.
My apologies. I was writing an email.
Fair enough. I think that we're at a point where I can call the vote here. We have, as it stands, and I will provide a more updated tally to the minute taker, but this will clearly pass in a vote of 20 to 1 to 2. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am going to, this is considered passed. We'll now move into the discussion section of this agenda. First, and this came to me from the Academic Affairs Committee through Katie, so feel free to lead the discussion here on both the no record COVID and the pass-fail to December 28th.
Yes, thank you, Luis. So these two discussion items are very, very interconnected, so I'm essentially just going to run you all through very quickly what we've done this semester with all of our work with pass-fail, with withdrawal. We had this huge announcement today that withdrawal has been extended to the 11th. So I'm just going to quickly walk you through what we've done and how we've gotten to this moment. And the Scholastic Standards Committee of the University Senate asked us to discuss both no record COVID and pass-fail deadline extensions to December 28th. I would just like to make it clear that their minds are essentially made up. They want to know our opinion, but our opinion probably won't change their mind. So I want to make that clear. Say however you feel. That's it, essentially. So at the end of September, we brought our pass-fail legislation to the Senate. It called for accepting pass-fail without the restrictions that would typically be on pass-fail, which the restrictions that exist now. And so that went through. We had proposed the date of December 28th without the restrictions, and it went through USG Senate. And then at the beginning of October, it went through to University Senate. When it reached University Senate, as we all know, it failed. And then we compiled a student survey from October 9th to the 22nd. We collected about 1,000 responses, and we compiled testimonials along with that survey, and we brought all of that data to the University Senate in the beginning of November. It again failed. And so I proceeded to write an op-ed about the University Senate because one of the main reasons why the proposal failed was because there are only 5 student voices on the University Senate, and there's about 72 faculty members, I believe. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really think that's important. The moral is there's a lot more faculty than students. So basically my article talks about that. And so that op-ed opened new conversation, and suddenly all of these groups were willing to, do some sort of compromise with us. And so Lakita, Janana, and I have been doing this all along. It's not just me, it's them too. So give your hugest thanks to them. But we've all been talking, and so that op-ed led to conversations with Carl, who is our provost, about extending the withdrawal deadline to the 11th, and so that has happened. Not the solution we wanted, but that's here nor there. And so essentially that's done. That's out of question, out of discussion. I think that's caught everyone up. So here we are. Scholastic Standards is looking into 2 different things to pass in the University Senate on December 7th. They want to know our opinion, but again, like I said, I don't think that they're going, I know that they're not going to change their mind. I think, I'll say this on recording, I think they just want to hear that we agree with them, and that doesn't necessarily have to be true. And I know that probably isn't true. So the first option that they're discussing is this no record dash COVID notation to grading. It's essentially the same thing as a W. It's essentially the same thing as withdrawing from a course. However, because it wouldn't pass through the University Senate until December 7th, and therefore wouldn't really be in time for this semester, they're looking at that to be a retroactive policy, meaning that they will pass it and students can put courses from this semester looking back onto no record COVID. So it's essentially the same thing as a W. It is a transcript notation, except it provides the explanation of COVID next to the grading notation instead of just a regular W. So that's another option they're looking into that they're talking about. They want to know our opinions. And then the second thing that they would like us to discuss is extending the pass-fail deadline to December 28th with the current restrictions, meaning no leniency on sort of what the spring policy looked like. It's, just extending the deadline, nothing else being done. So those are the two things. We're open to hearing both. They want feedback. Again, you don't have to agree with them, and I don't think that everyone will. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Fabio, you're recognized.
Well, first of all, Katie, we are so lucky to have you. Really, kudos to you for all that you've done. You deserve every bit of credit, and anyone else that helped you along with that op-ed, because at the end of the day, it may not be what we wanted, but I know that there are students out there that will benefit from that withdrawal extension that was just announced today or yesterday. So you did a lot of really good work there. These two items, probably not what we wanted, right? But essentially everything with the University Senate is a negotiation. I would implore the University Senate to pass both, and I'll get into both why. So as far as the no record COVID notation goes, I don't see what harm that does to the university. I don't think it really does any harm to the university. And all it does really is give peace of mind to the student that if they have to take a course for a W, that whatever's notated on their transcript provides an explanation that it was COVID related and not simply, the typical W like other semesters. So I would hope that they afford students that came to unforeseen circumstances because of COVID. I hope that the University Senate would afford those students peace of mind and allow that notation to be added. I also support the pass-fail deadline to December 28th. I myself converted a class to pass-fail. I was doing very well. My quiz average has been very high. My exam 1 was very good. And I did poorly on exam 2, and very unexpected. So, I have medical school apps out right now. They are going to be, they have requested my semester grades for this semester. I've worked very hard, and I know all of us have been working very hard. But I had to convert a class to pass fail because I didn't know, what my grade was going to be. Tried to work it out with the professor, and there's no drop policy. There's no final replaces a lower exam grade policy. So for me, there was really no path forward to get, a grade that I was satisfied with. And then because of that, I dropped the class. Now, if there's a curve on the class, that may raise everyone's grade. So I'm afraid to see a grade that I would be satisfied with get posted knowing I have converted to pass fail. And I imagine there are other students in this situation that converted to pass fail, out of fear because they didn't know if they were going to do poorly on an upcoming exam, or they didn't know they were going to do poorly on a final. For me, it was very unexpected. So there's other students out there. I would hope that the University Senate, with everything that has been going on in the world, I recently wrote an email to a professor and, spoke about this. I feel like we have all been reminded of how valuable life is and how dispensable everything else is. 2 years from now, when we graduate, whatever, how many years into the future, I don't think anybody's going to be looking back and saying, wow, UConn was so lenient and extended the pass-fail deadline to December 28th. Nobody's going to care. So I hope that the University Senate sympathizes. I hope they hear this point. I hope someone writes about it. I hope they listen to a recording, whatever it may be. They hear our voices, and they should do right by us and put us at ease. We've all been through so much, and you know what? Professors have as well. But I don't see how either of these policies harm UConn as an institution or harm its integrity. And for that reason, I hope they side with us and help us. And happy holidays to you all. Again, Katie, the work you've done, you should be so proud. I'm very proud. I'm sure we're all very proud to have you. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you, Fabio. Janana.
Hi, everyone. First, I want to thank Katie and Lakita for all the work they put in to compile data for the University Senate. I want to thank the university senators who argued for pass-fail in Senate because it is a faculty-dominated space, and it is difficult to have these conversations when students are underrepresented in these spaces. I also wanted to update you all that I volunteered myself to be on the no record subcommittee for SSC, and we are currently in the process of deciding between extending the no record, proposing the extension of the no record policy for December or February. So basically, the note record policy would work just as a withdrawal. So we're thinking about presenting and voting for it either on the December 7th meeting for University Senate or presenting it, voting on it on the February 1st meeting. So I wanted to ask you all if this would make a difference for you. And I feel like it would, just because I'm considering internships and job opportunities, given that they do look at transcripts. So I just want to hear some of your thoughts.
Mitchell.
Yeah, I think that obviously it's not what we wanted. It's still a W. It's still whatever. I, at my previous institution, did withdraw from a class because I didn't need it anymore. But it was a huge decision because I changed majors as a thing. But whatever. I didn't need it. I wasn't doing well in the class. I said, I don't want to do Chem 2 anymore. We're done. I'm changing majors anyway. Don't need it. I'll do a different science later. And I was still super stressed because my counselor's like, it's still a W. Like, and I was like, and like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, I don't know. People look at transcripts. So they're not going to have the backstory. I mean, I guess you could tell them it, but the transcript's just going to say withdrew from a class and it's not going to explain anything. This at least does give some peace of mind if you do have to withdraw from a class. Still not ideal. Wish you could just pass fail it, getting by with getting the credit for that course. But at least it says something. I mean, ideally, an employer or somebody would be like, oh, yeah, okay, COVID was going on. I'm going to understand. But maybe, who knows? Who knows? So maybe a little mark saying, hey, reminder, there was a worldwide pandemic. Cut them some slack. And the university decided to write this little blurb. It's better than nothing, I guess. So yeah. And then on extending the deadline as well is always just a good, helpful thing for students. So in favor of it all, with the notation that, hey, like, this is, you could have done better here, university. But yeah.
Sorry, could I clarify?
Go for it.
I just wanted to ask if it would make a difference whether this would be proposed and voted on in the December 7th meeting versus the February meeting, because I know that, internships, the deadlines are different.
Thank you for the clarification. Mitchell, do you want to kind of clarify your comment there, or kind of add an amendment?
Sorry for not understanding.
Totally.
I don't know. I'm sure somebody else could comment better on that. I'm not sure how exactly that would affect.
Ben. Ben Kelty.
Thank you.
There you go.
I'd like to first of all echo what Mitch and Fabio said. I would encourage the Senate to pass both of these. One thing that I would encourage for those of us who are considering the no record COVID is to make sure that that is available to students who have already withdrawn from classes. I withdrew from a class, before the withdrawal deadline, but I have a W on my transcript right now. And I don't want to get into it too much, but basically I registered for a music class and then I found out too late that no, I would not have a physical place that I could play my trombone. And so of course I had to withdraw or I would fail band. And that's definitely a COVID restriction. And so I would say, a lot of students have already withdrawn. And getting that no record COVID instead of a withdrawal is better for a lot of students. Thank you to Lakita, to Janana, to Katie, to everyone else. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing.
I'd also like to just very much thank you for everything you guys have done. I totally meant to say that. I'm so sorry.
Wonderful. Thank you both. On to Lakita, then Sarah Hill.
Hey everyone. I did want to clarify something about the no record COVID because I'm looking at the email chain right now and I realized there was something that I think we misheard at the meeting. But essentially, the no record COVID would actually replace any W or an F that is put for any class that is put on pass fail and the student were to fail it. And so that can get tricky because then if someone were to, let's say, put no record COVID for a W, but then another student does it for an F, colleges wouldn't, or anyone that's like receiving the transcript wouldn't know for which reason. So that is one place where it can get tricky. And then I did also want to say that so any student that's already withdrawn from a class this semester would be able to use the no record COVID if it were to pass at University Senate because it is something that is being done retroactively.
Did you say would or would not be able
It
to?
would be they would be for the semester, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Hill.
Okay, I wanted to respond to Janana's question, so someone's responding to it. Because I think as long as the no record would still be applicable to this semester if it's passed in February, I don't think the date that it's passed matters. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Sarah. Ben Kilty.
I have a clarifying question as well as a comment about what Sarah just said. And I think that from a student peace of mind perspective, it would be much better to get this passed on the 7th instead of in February, just because then students are going into break knowing what they're doing versus students stressing about it for months and then figuring out in February that, oh, I can put this on no record or I can pass fail this. As well as, Fabio spoke about med school applications, and they've requested people's transcripts. And I imagine that if we wait until February to pass this, some transcripts are going to get sent to admissions committees with the Fs on them and stuff like that. I also have a clarifying question for Lakita, which is, so this is retroactively applying only to Fs and Ws. In other words, if I get a D in a class, can I not change that to no record COVID?
So it's only applying for Fs in classes where it's pass fail. Right? So if someone was on pass fail and they failed a class, it would appear as an F but not be involved in GPA calculations. However, with the way that they're planning to enact the no record COVID, any student can use it for either a W or an F, that like for pass fail that they failed a class.
All right, thank you. A quick question for the university senators. Would you like me to do a quick straw poll of the room? I feel like that might be effective at this point in time to see which the room prefers.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure because I thought the December deadline would be better given that, we have internships and students would probably be at peace. I'm echoing what Ben's saying. So I wanted to make sure that the students felt the same way, so a poll would be beneficial.
All right, I'll make a poll. While I'm making the poll, Damani is free to speak.
Thank you. I will apologize if this has been asked and answered. But I just wanted to clarify something. A fail and a W can be put on no record. Could a fail that was not graded pass fail? So say it was the regular grading scheme and I get a 50 in a class. Can that also be converted to no record, or is that not what this is addressing?
Not the way that it currently looks in the email chain where the communication is occurring, but it can be something that can be asked. But I believe their intention was that it would be a fail on a pass-fail course.
Right. Okay. But I could later switch that to pass-fail and then to no record?
Oh, yes, technically if you are eligible, but thinking about it, most students with certain classes aren't eligible, like the School of Engineering. No one is eligible even for electives. And then even for students, it would be purely elective courses where they can. So that's why I wanted to make sure I made the distinction.
Thank you.
What were the two dates again so that I can do this straw poll?
December 7th and I think February 1st.
First? Okay. All right. So yeah. Anyone can answer. This is just student participation.
Before we do the voting, I'm so sorry. You might have to redo the voting just because I want to explain why those two dates are done the way they are. I'm not sure if it was before, but the reason December 7th could be a bit more conflicting is because at University Senate, you would need a 67% majority, I believe, the first time a vote is going on. But if it's introduced at one meeting and then voted on the next meeting, you would only need a 50%.
I want to clarify. That's not what I meant. I'm saying that the SSC wants to present and vote in the same meeting, but they're thinking about either presenting and voting on December 7th or February 1st. So it would still be a 68% majority.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
All right. That'll conclude discussion on this particular line. Please vote one way or another. The majority remains the same. We have 16 people who have not yet started. Oh, beautiful. It just dropped down to 10. 3 people who... 4. Oh, you're moving too fast for me. I'll just stop narrating. We still have 8 no answers, though. So please, if you've not answered, do it.
Are we voting on pass-fail right now? Because pass-fail would need to be done December 7th. It would be the no record code.
Sorry, we're voting
Okay,
on
cool.
we're voting on whatever we're talking about. I
Okay.
didn't write it down properly. I do apologize. So it's the December 7th, or this isn't binding by any way. This is just for you guys to have some context as to what like students in the Senate feel. It's not even a voting item. I'm just doing this out of convenience since we only really had 2 opinions posited on this particular matter. So we have 22 for 6 again. No, I'm reading in the order that I would normally. I apologize. So we have 22 for December 7th and 6 for February 1st. And that's kind of the final tally that we have here. So it seems December 7th is the more popular option.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So now I'm not gonna continue the... Yeah. So is there any further discussion at this point? I'm not going to keep sharing my screen. We have those 2 topics that Katie talked about. I'll accept any discussion on that or anything in general. Damani, I think your hand's up from before. Or is this for this? Janana.
Just a clarification again. Katie said that it would be extended till December 28th for the pass-fail with restrictions. They're also going to do this for the spring.
Mm-hmm.
But, still has restrictions. It would only help a minority of students.
Thank you for that clarification. I do appreciate that. Any further points of discussion in general around this? Seeing none, we'll move into announcements. So we have 2 announcements here, and feel free to make another if you have it. First is the Internal Affairs email list. Please, I don't particularly feel like sending more emails to Senate about internal affairs. So if you are interested or think you will be at all interested in any of the happenings of internal affairs, even if you don't attend regularly, please fill out that form so that I can only send that to the senators interested rather than the whole of the body. Yeah, that's kind of the announcement there. That will allow Irene to start sending out her own emails so that we have more of an autonomous internal affairs committee, which I really think would be a good idea. Next, I'll take other announcements. I want my other announcement to be last, so I'll take all other announcements here. So, Christine.
Hey everyone. So I just wanted to make you all aware of student development with the wonderful help of our amazing Katie, Sarah Hill, and Kavya. We put together an infographic for tomorrow, which is International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So make sure to look out for that on the USG Instagram and share that. They were amazing, and I really appreciate their vulnerability and just self-advocacy that they do within themselves. And yeah, this came out wonderfully. So definitely make sure to look out for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. On to Fabio.
All right, everyone, I'll make this quick. It's been a long night. So I'm graduating in May. So I think I'm the only senior elected at-large rep right now. So this is a pitch to run for really office in general, but to run for comptroller. You guys really don't know a lot of what I do based on Senate, but it really surrounds Tier 2 funding. So it is a very important job. And what I can say is Tier 2 funding was very different before I got here. So I've had a very pro Tier 2 vision. That may change in the future. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's an important position here. So I hope I would love to see like a contested election for once. In the past, the comptroller election has not been contested, at least in recent memory. So I would love to see some multiple people running for it with different visions. So feel free to like reach out with questions. I have an office hour tomorrow between 11 and 12, and then on Friday between 10 and 11. Could always email me or text me with questions. Happy to meet to tell you more about it. So definitely run in general. And I encourage lots of people to run for comptroller. With that, have a happy holiday.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Katie, your hand's up next.
Yeah, I'll make this really quick. Everyone, please check out the finals care fair page that's on the USG webpage right now. Kylie helped me put it together. Well, I gave Kylie the resources. She put it all together. It's amazing. It's really cool. It has all sorts of resources and a calendar with all the finals related events that are happening during the reading week next week. The Academic Achievement Center and the Career Center are both holding workshops at my request. So December 8th and 9th, I will be sending an email to you all tomorrow in the listserv with the links for that. Please show up. They are doing it just because I asked. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Wonderful as always. Mitchell.
Hey guys, I'll make this quick as well. I'm sure Noah will send out more information as this goes along. But for those of you that don't know, I am the State Affairs Coordinator, and my subcommittee that I'm starting up is almost all good to go. The name is still in flux, but right now we're calling it the Student Connection Subcommittee of External Affairs, and it's focusing on legislative policy and all that good stuff. And so I just wanted to mention it because the legislature does start when we're not full. So it's going to be a long session starting in January. And so I'm going to be working on state policy and taking a look at all of that. And so will my subcommittee, and we'll be likely having kind of informal meetings before the semester starts, because that is when the legislature starts their meetings. So I'm sure I'll force Noah to send out an email to all of Senate, just informing you of all of that in case if you want to be a part of it. It's going to be open for all UConn students, as well as obviously anyone in the USG. So, and also pleasure to be a part of the Senate with all of you guys. And I hope you all have a great break if I do not talk to you again. But yeah, take care.
Thank you, Mitchell. Sorry, I think I skipped you, Neha. I do apologize for that. I just looked back and your hand is above Mitchell's. So feel free to make your announcement now.
I just want to say thank you. This is my first semester working with USG, and I really, really enjoyed it. For those who do not celebrate any holidays during this break, I know it can get lonely. I'm always here for you guys. This is the first time I'm celebrating Christmas, but for the rest of my life, I never celebrated a holiday during this time, and I know how lonely it can get. So I'm here for all of you guys. It's tough. There's COVID. You might not be able to see family or friends, or might not be with people because you don't celebrate the holidays. So I'm here for all of you guys if you need any extra emotional support. Like I said, I'm pretty bored on the holidays too. I don't really celebrate it that much, so you can always reach out to me. But enjoy your time off. Sleep a lot, not a little. Sleep as much as you can, and re-energize for this second semester to get going on all this work again.
Thank you, Neha. Josh. You're muted still, Josh. Oh wait, no, it doesn't appear as if your microphone is working. I suppose we can hop over to Damani and while you try to troubleshoot the issue. If you'd like to text it to me, I can make the announcement on your behalf as well.
I think I'm going to steal Josh's announcement, which is to tell everyone to keep their my dog says hello, to keep their eyes open for emails on the committee on social interaction. We will be doing some stuff over the break. We don't know yet. We are open to suggestions. Feel free to email me at damani@uconn.edu, Josh at Joshua Crow, joshua.crow@uconn.edu. Hey, it's 10. That's my announcement.
To quickly add on to that, I recommend that you two make any events available to the group so that all can see and join quickly. And if you're not in the group me, please email me and I will put you in the group me. So yes, I know that we had some trouble with that earlier, but now to my announcement. I'd just like to thank you all for bearing with me for these first couple of Senates that I've had. It's been quite a ride. I've enjoyed them. I've also been stressed quite extensively during a number of them. And I really appreciate all of you bearing with me and continuing to advocate through this really difficult time. We're in the middle of like something that's going to go down in history, and we're all sticking through it. We're all advocating. We're all representing students, and I commend all of you for that. You've all done wonderful jobs. Even if we've not all disagreed at some point in time, I'm very grateful that we could all come here and discuss what we've discussed. We're doing the students' work. We're fulfilling our mandate, and we're doing a great job. I'd like to commend all of you. I'd like to commend all of the things that you've done, and really thank you for helping me succeed in the way that I have thus far as speaker. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful winter break. And we're all a little bit re-energized, ready to hit the ground running in the spring. And with that thought out of the way, I'm going to call the final session 2020 to a close at 10:03 p.m. Thank you all for coming. The champagne and stuff, wonderful. I don't remember who said to do that, but I think have a nice break. I'm here if you need anything, if you want help with anything.
Thank you all so much.
Have a nice break, guys.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody. I'm also here if anyone needs anything ever.
I'm here if you need me for whatever reason. You probably won't, but shoot me an email. It's lonely at home.
Always feel free to reach out, Ben. I'm glad to talk or help.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Adios.
I'm very sorry about what happened to you just now, Josh. That was tough.
Does it really just not work at all?
No, it's working now. It's perfect. It's perfect right now.
You guys can hear me perfectly.
Yeah.
Oh, you cut out there a little bit at the beginning, but we heard the second half of that sentence.
Does it work better with my video off?
Significantly.
Yeah, so what it is like I'm like on the other side of my house and my Wi-Fi isn't great over here. So I think I can either like show my face or speak. There is no way I can do both.
Have you tried plugging in or unplugging your phone, Josh?
What I've tried doing is like, and what I probably will do next time is I'll have my computer up and then my phone also signed in. And that way I can talk on my phone and like I'll call in and I can talk on the phone and you can all see my face on the computer.